story begins with our protagonist running for his life, but he tripped on something, and immediately, he started falling down the cliff. He hit the ground hard, realizing his legs were completely exhausted. Yo-woon looked up and saw a bunch of hooded figures surrounding him. He realized that they were behind everything. One of the hooded figures chuckled, saying that young Master Cheon had taken so long that he was starting to get bored. Yo-woon thought about what he could do, since he was too tired to run anymore. He asked them why they were doing this, since he had no intention of joining the academy and had no chance of winning anyway. The hooded figure replied that it didn't matter if he had given up on the academy or if his fighting skills were terrible. Young Master Cheon should already know that. The figure stated that as long as Yo-woon was a potential heir, there was no other way, and they would make his death painless because he had the blood of his holiness running through him. He couldn't believe they would slander his mother like that. Yo-woon realized they had no intention of killing him painlessly, so he wouldn't die without a fight. He wondered if guard Zhang had taught them how to fight. The hooded figure observed that Yo-woon had no idea what he was doing, but it looked like the battle marks of his holiness ran strong in him. The hooded figure noted how Yo-woon refused to give up despite not knowing the first thing about fighting, and that it would make this hunt all the more rewarding. The hooded figure ordered them to kill Yo-woon. Yo-woon was barely dodging the attacks. At the same time, one of the hooded figures threw something. Yo-woon screamed as a sword hit him. Meanwhile, one of the hooded figures was moving in. One of the hooded figures grabbed Yo-woon by the neck, clenching his fist. The hooded figure chuckled, asking Yo-woon if he was finished. Another hooded figure yelled for the others to watch out, but it was too late. He stabbed Yo-woon. The other hooded figures watched in shock as the protagonist got one of them. The hooded figure chuckled, saying that Yo-woon deserved it. He wondered how this untrained kid could kill a member of the stealth squad. Was it just luck? The hooded figure thought it was impressive that Yo-woon was so smart even when facing death. He wondered what he could do with training. Then, he swung his sword and yelled at Yo-woon. The hooded figure attacked. As a result, Yo-woon was choking. The hooded figure looked down, saying that the games were over. Yo-woon was lying on the ground, looking defeated. He coughed as he was choking. As a result, the view above him blurred. The hooded figure asked Yo-woon how it felt to have a hole in his stomach. Yo-woon thought he was out of tricks, but at least he took one of them down with him. He wanted to make the enemy suffer longer as he died. The hooded figure didn't like this, but he figured it couldn't be helped. They lost a man. He sighed. Suddenly there was a flash. The hooded figure's eyes widened. One of them suddenly exploded. Turns out, Yo-woon was perfectly fine, and the assassins around him were getting wrecked. Yo-woon was barely conscious, but the hooded figure was asking what that white light was just now. The hooded figure felt something and shifted his foot. Then he yelled at the others to turn around and look behind them. They all turned to see a strange blue figure standing in the forest. The new guy with modern-looking clothes was a contrast to this ancient era. One of the hooded figures wondered what that strange outfit was. The hooded figure yelled, demanding to know who was there, but the guy smirked, and immediately there was a bright flash. The assassins went flying into the air. The assassin was completely shocked by what he just saw. He couldn't believe that the guy had disappeared right in front of them. He wondered if it was some kind of advanced martial art, or if he had turned invisible. Another assassin yelled to the captain, asking what the light was. The captain was just as confused. He wondered if it was the power of some master helping Yo-woon, but he couldn't understand why a master would help him. The captain figured that Yo-woon had lost too much blood to live. They had completed their mission. The assassins yelled to retreat and started running away. The figure's hand glowed with blue light. The last assassin also met his end. Yo-woon was grinning, saying that was excellent. The figure talked to him, saying that his noble ancestor was in a good mood, despite bleeding to death. Our protagonist wondered what the guy meant by calling him his noble ancestor. As his vision blurred, Yo-woon thought to himself that his body was getting cold, and he wondered if this was how he was going to die. Suddenly, a new guy showed up, saying he was already found. He added that he wanted to come earlier to teach him how to use it, but there was no time. The guy said he had to hurry before Yo-woon died, and he stabbed him with a syringe. He admitted that it hurt just watching the needle go in, but he was all done. He said, "All right, forefather." The guy said he hoped Yo-woon would succeed and do some good for his descendants. He told him that the nanomachines were cutting edge, so he wouldn't have any trouble using them. Then, the man disappeared in a flash of light. Yo-woon, barely conscious, wondered what the strange boy was saying. Suddenly, Yo-woon heard something strange in his head. about SkyCorp and a Gen 7 nanomachine now being operational. Long ago, the warriors of China learned martial arts to defend themselves. As time went on, these martial arts changed from just self-defense into a deadly art. They wrote down the fighting forms and breathing techniques to increase their power, and these became sacred manuals. Factions started to form as warriors gathered around masters, hoping to become their students. Among these were the righteous faction, who followed the path of good, and the evil faction, who followed the path of wickedness. The leaders of these factions stood on high, surrounded by their followers. These mighty warriors gathered to build their power. Yo Woon woke up in bed, looking around with a shocked expression. He wondered if he was actually alive. He remembered getting stabbed in the stomach. Then he wondered what had happened to him and why he was so wet. As he tried to sit up, he noticed something was wrong. He started coughing, and then he noticed something sticky. He looked at his hand and wondered what the black stuff was. He smelled something awful. He jumped out of bed, asking who was there. He didn't see anyone around and wondered what was going on. Then he heard a voice telling him to calm down. User, Yo Woon, felt like the sound was vibrating in his head. He wondered if it was actually coming directly from inside him. Then he heard a voice that said, "That's right, user." He was shocked and asked, "What?" He screamed, asking who was talking to him. The voice responded that it was SkyCorp's Gen 7 nanomachine. Yo Woon didn't understand a word and shouted, asking who they were and why they were doing this to him. The voice repeated that it was a Gen 7 nanomachine. Yo Woon repeated the word machine. Then the voice confirmed that it was a nanomachine. Yo Woon trembled, asking if it was true, if it was really the revered machine. Meanwhile, two men were talking. One said, "This way, Physician Beck," and the other responded, "Very well." Then, one of them asked if it was an assassination attempt, and the other confirmed. The man thought that they had always looked down on the young master and tried to kill him before, but he never thought they would try to separate him from the young master, because if they could trick someone like Guard Zhang, it had to be the stealth squad. It was a miracle that the young master survived. Meanwhile, the two men continued to walk deeper into the building. The man paused, thinking to himself. Well, he started gasping for air. Turning around, he saw someone standing over a dead body. There was only one whole body left intact. He was lying there, stabbed by the dagger that was given to the young master. Then he heard the sound of breathing. Not too far from the bodies, Yo Woon was lying in a signs of battle. He had lost a lot of battle marks, but at the same time, two men were talking. The first man noticed that the young master had no wounds on his body. The second man agreed. The first man wondered who could have helped him. He didn't think the patriarch would involve himself in such spats. The second man agreed, saying it was interesting. So they decided to hurry to the young master's chambers. Yo Woon looked around, completely confused. He was wondering what a user was. Yo Woon was sitting on the floor when he heard a voice asking if he wanted to proceed. Suddenly, blue light started to surround him. He started choking and then threw up everything he had in his stomach. He coughed, and the voice said it was normal after the first transfer of information and that it wouldn't happen again. He was still very confused, though. He looked at his hand and asked if it was a nanomachine. The voice confirmed it, saying there were over 6 billion nanomachines in his body. Yo Woon sighed, realizing it wasn't a human or the machine. He then wondered if it could leave his body if he wanted it to, but the transferred information stated that it was programmed to only exit his body if he died. The young master remained sitting on the floor, thinking about everything he had just learned. He wondered why this was happening to him. Who put the nanomachine inside him? At that moment, Hu Bong knocked on the door, announcing that Physician Beck was there to see him. Yo Woon was shocked. He told the nanomachine to stay quiet because he didn't want anyone to think he was crazy for talking to a machine in his head. He told it they could continue to communicate through thoughts only, and then he muted it temporarily. Hu Bong thought the young master was still asleep, so he examined him quietly. But then, he realized that Yo Woon was awake. He asked how he was feeling, but then he suddenly gagged. Hu Bong suddenly smelled something weird and asked the young master what it was, then realized that he forgot. At the same time, Physician Beck was thinking about something. The physician remembered that they had met before when he took care of his mother when she was sick. He asked for the young master's hand to check his pulse. As Physician Beck checked Yo Woon's pulse, he flinched. The physician said something was strange, which made Hu Bong ask if something was wrong with the young master. But the physician told him that it was quite the opposite, and that this was very lucky. Physician Beck explained that the toxins had left his body, and his qi was flowing well. He asked if Yo Woon had taken some kind of special herb. Hu Bong looked confused, and asked what the physician meant, as Yo Woon looked up from the bed. Physician Beck told him that his body was now in perfect condition condition to learn martial arts. Yo-woon was shocked. Yo-woon looked at the black sticky substance on his body and wondered if that was the toxins that came out of him. He wondered if the nanomachine did this. The nanomachine confirmed it. Suddenly, Yo-woon was standing in the middle of a blue light as the nanomachine scanned him. Yo-woon smirked. The demonic cult really respects martial and demonic arts, and among the different groups inside, there are 6 main sects: the shadow, sword, stealth, poison, saber, and musician sects. These sects made a deal to give their maidens to the leader of the demonic cult so he could have heirs. These heirs can become minor priests and are raised by their mothers' families. When they get older, they go to the Academy of the Demonic Arts. The Academy of the Demonic Arts only opens once every 10 years. The instructors are the best masters in the cult, and their goal is to make the students fight each other to improve their martial arts skills. But there's a time when the competition gets super intense. It's when the candidates for minor priesthood enter the academy. Members of the cult call this the grand tournament for the minor priesthood. The physician thought to himself that someone must have helped Yo-woon, since he was perfectly healthy now. He told Yo-woon that he would prescribe some herbal medicine to help him recover. Yo-woon offered to walk physician back out, but the physician said it wasn't necessary and told him to stay and watch over the young master. The physician wondered how Yo-woon could have changed so much. He remembered how small he used to be and how he couldn't learn any martial arts. He thought that even though Yo-woon was the son of a servant girl, he still had the battle marks of his holiness. The physician wondered if the patriarch had changed his mind about the young master. The physician decided that if his holiness had helped the young master in secret, he didn't need to acknowledge it. He figured the academy was going to be interesting this year. Yo-woon was relieved that the physician didn't notice anything strange. He realized he was alive because Guard Zhang found him. The nanomachine might have healed him, but if Guard Zhang hadn't found him, he would have been dead. He wanted to thank Zhang for saving him, but then he realized how bad he smelled. He figured he should probably take a bath first, since he reeked. Yo-woon was sitting in the tub, and he asked the nanomachine to tell him about its healing abilities. At the same time, the nanomachine responded. The nanomachine explained that it could quickly heal external wounds and internal organ damage, but battle marks loss, or loss of flesh, would take much longer because they required cell division. Yo-woon thought it sure liked to say a lot of things he didn't understand. Yo-woon was still in the tub, and he wondered if it would be okay to test the nanomachine's abilities. Then, without hesitation, he sliced his hand with a knife. He yelled out in pain as the nanomachine announced it was starting to heal the knife wound. Yo-woon was shocked, and the wound on his hand began to close up. The bleeding stopped almost instantly. He was amazed. Then he looked up from the water. Yo-woon couldn't believe he had just seen that happen. He knew he could heal, but he wondered if he could use all the other abilities the nanomachine had given him. He decided he would test them out as soon as he was done with his bath. Yo-woon started flexing his pecs. Yo-woon couldn't believe it. His muscles had grown like he had been training for years. He asked if the nanomachine had done this too. The nanomachine confirmed that it had restructured his body. The old man came in with his clothes, calling him young master. Yo-woon replied that it was scientifically impossible to create something from nothing. He added that it wasn't hard to restructure battle marks vessels, tendons, and muscles. The old man thought Yo-woon was talking strangely again, and that all the studying he did was a waste of time. Yo-woon told Nano he was in the library and asked what he should do now. The nanomachine told him to hold a book in front of him and turn the pages one at a time. Yo-woon asked if he should just skim them. The nanomachine said yes. It looked like the only martial arts books there were about acupoints and chi circulation. The nanomachine said that even if someone trained with the 3 powers breathing method for a lifetime, they probably wouldn't even reach the level of a third-rate master. It would probably be better to learn the acupoints. Yo-woon told Nano he was going to start. At the same time, Nano told the young master to proceed. Nano announced it was done and that the acupoint text was complete. Then Nano asked if he wanted to proceed with the transfer. Yo-woon confirmed that was correct and told Nano to proceed. Immediately, a surge of energy coursed through him. There was a whooshing sound as the contents were transferred. Yo-woon gasped and wobbled. Yo-woon was still gasping for air, but Nano assured him that he would adjust soon. Nano then asked if he was worried about him. Yo-woon called him a soulless scoundrel. Yo-woon wondered what he should do now. He thought about the information he wanted, like when he received the transfer of the instruction manual. He knew that acupoints played an important role in the meridian channels and associated vessels for chi, and that the 2 major kinds of acupoints were critical and reservoir acupoints. He realized that critical acupoints are also called paralysis points because striking them can cause one to become momentarily paralyzed. Yo Woon was shocked, saying it wasn't simply memorization and that he understood the whole text. Nano said that it had also corrected any errors in the text before transferring it. Yo Woon was shocked that there were errors. Nano confirmed that it had corrected errors regarding the acupoints based on the information stored in its database. He realized that with this ability, he could study martial arts texts faster than anyone else. Yo Woon smirked, thinking that the other 6 young masters had trained in the advanced martial arts since they were small, but because of their tact and watchful eyes, all he could learn was the 3 powers breathing method. He'd heard that the library in the Academy of the Demonic Arts held not only the demonic martial arts texts, but the texts pillaged from the righteous and evil factions as well. Yo Woon realized that he had a clear goal now. He was going to use his new ability to become the strongest at the academy. Meanwhile, this was the residence of the stealth sect's successor to the minor priesthood, located in the southeast corner within the demonic cult city walls. The guy was furious that he asked his squad to get rid of some trash, but all 5 of them died. He couldn't believe it. He figured a hidden master must have been involved, and he called out young Master Majium's name. The other guy snapped his fingers, apologizing to young Master Cheon. The man thought that someone of such low birth should be helpless, but it seemed he was hiding something. He had even separated him from his guard. He wondered if someone else was protecting him, maybe her father. The guy figured he didn't want to dirty his hands, but it looked like he didn't have a choice. Cheon Yo Woon clenched his fist, promising to kill the man himself at the Academy of Demonic Arts. The sun rose over the mountains, painting the sky with light. Turns out, Cheon Yo Woon was so nervous that he couldn't sleep at all. He was just lying in bed, wide awake. It seemed like it was still dawn, but it was finally the day for him to enter the Academy of Demonic Arts. Suddenly, a man appeared, swinging a sword right in front of the building. The guy kept swinging his sword around. Cheon Yo Woon was thinking that he should have learned Guard Jang's dagger technique in secret, but he knew the other 6 sects always had their eyes on him. That's why he promised his mother on her deathbed that he wouldn't learn martial arts before entering the academy. Suddenly, he heard a voice calling him Master. He was confused. At the same time, Guard Jang was training. Yo Woon looked shocked. Yo Woon asked if someone could someone else's moves. The voice replied, yes. Yo Woon asked if they could guard Jang's technique and then transfer it to his brain. The nano said it had all kinds of martial arts data ready to transfer, but Yo Woon wondered if he should really steal Guard Jang's techniques without asking. He decided against waiting. He had to enter the academy without a guard, so he needed to learn to protect himself ASAP. Yo Woon told the nano to start scanning Guard Jang's moves. At the same time, Guard Jang kept training with his daggers. Guard Jang kept slashing through the air. Meanwhile, the nano continued to him. The nano announced that it took about an hour. It had successfully copied all of Guard Jang's techniques. The nano started transferring the martial arts data to Yo Woon's brain. The transfer finished, and the nano said it was getting easier for it to do this. Yo Woon was shocked. He couldn't believe how well it worked. He felt the technique flowing through him. He knew Jang's dagger technique. Yo Woon realized he couldn't let Jang see him like this. He might get suspicious. Yo Woon took a deep breath and began practicing the shift step. Yo Woon's eyes glowed with power, and immediately the ground around him shattered into pieces. He moved with incredible speed, practicing the martial art he had just learned. Yo Woon realized he had mastered a technique he should have spent 20 years on, skipping the daily practice entirely. The nano asked if he wanted to transfer the muscle information to his body, but if he didn't, his body would be in pain. His body was in immense pain, and he asked the nano what was wrong with him. The nano explained that Yo Woon had used the new technique without developing the muscles needed, which caused damage. Yo Woon told the nano to make the explanation easier, feeling insulted by the nano's language. The nano adjusted the language and explained that young Master Cheon hadn't trained with Guard Jang's technique before, so his body wasn't used to it. The nano said that once his body got used to the move through simulation, the muscle information had to be transferred for him to master it. Yo Woon understood that if the information transferred to his muscles, it wouldn't hurt anymore. The nano confirmed that was correct and asked if he wanted to start the transfer, which would take 2 hours. Yo Woon said that was fine and told the nano to proceed. The nano warned that the process involved extreme pain, so he would be put to sleep, mentioning that many people faint during the process. Yo-woon wondered if he should risk it. He asked if he could proceed without being put to sleep, and if he could still be put to sleep if he couldn't handle it. The nano started the transfer. At first, Yo-woon thought he had worried for nothing and that it just tickled. Suddenly, he was hit with a wave of pain and screamed. The nano started the anesthesia, and with that, Yo-woon passed out. Meanwhile, someone was cooking in the kitchen and tasted the food. He smiled, thinking he would go all out today and cook all of the young master's favorites. The cook remembered that it had been 5 years since he started cooking for Yo-woon, and he couldn't even cook rice back then. A woman, seemingly on her deathbed, told guard Jung that she was leaving Yo-woon in his hands. The cook looked up, thinking about how Lady Hua had died from small doses of poison 5 years ago, and that the young master was now entering the Academy of Demonic Arts. He asked Lady Hua to watch over the young master so that he could cook for him again. Suddenly, Yo-woon flinched, seemingly in pain. Immediately, the cook slammed open the door and asked if the young master was okay. The cook found the young master passed out on the table and shouted in surprise. Immediately, he checked Yo-woon's pulse. The cook found that his pulse was normal, and he wondered what Yo-woon had been doing. Then, the cook noticed some footprints on the ground. He touched the floor to see if they were still wet. The cook realized that the young master had been watching him train for about 2 years. He couldn't believe that Yo-woon had caught up with 20 years of his training just by watching him for 2 years. The system announced that the conversion of muscle fibers and tendons was complete, and it was lifting the anesthesia. Yo-woon woke up sweating. Yo-woon was gasping for air, saying that he would never do that again. At the same time, Nano told him that it had warned him. Yo-woon wondered why he was lying on the floor, and if guard Jang had been there. Then, he noticed the dagger on the floor. Yo-woon wondered if it would hurt to use the dagger technique now. Nano told him that it had converted his muscle fiber and tendons to the same level as someone who had trained for 20 years. Yo-woon agreed and slashed with the dagger. Immediately, he was shocked by the power. Yo-woon noticed that the sequence was the same, but his moves were more accurate and powerful. The feeling of slicing through the air was incredible to our hero. He slashed and twirled the dagger. Yo-woon finished the first sequence. Then, he prepared for the first step of the second sequence. He stepped down with so much force that the floor cracked. Yo-woon was surprised. He realized he was able to leave such deep footprints, even without mastering the internal technique. Yo-woon realized he had mastered the external technique, even though he had 0 internal technique. He figured guard Jang was going to be shocked when he saw this. At the same time, the cook knocked on the door to bring the young master his breakfast. The cook panicked, wondering what he should do. He realized pressing down on the floor wasn't helping at all. Meanwhile, the cook called out to the young master again. The cook entered the room, saying he was hungry today. He noticed that Yo-woon always took his meals by the window. At the same time, Yo-woon smiled, thinking he wouldn't be coming home for a while, so he felt like switching things up a bit. Yo-woon hoped the cook didn't notice anything. He saw his favorite meal, sautéed bok choy, roast pork, and fried egg on rice. Yo-woon thought the cook really knew him, and since he was entering the Academy of Demonic Arts today, this might be the last time he got to eat Jang's cooking. Suddenly, he felt acid reflux because of the change in emotion. Nano told him to swallow food and saliva to counteract the secretion of stomach acid. Yo-woon told Nano to be quiet and stop talking in a language he couldn't understand. Yo-woon decided to focus on his meal and planned to eat every last bite. Guard Jang told him to slow down, but the young master just said, "Right." Guard Jang thanked the young master, but then he got serious and asked when Yo-woon had learned his dagger technique. Yo-woon was confused and stammered, asking what Guard Jang meant by that. At the same time, Guard Jang dragged the barrel away. Guard Jang kept pulling the barrel, making a loud scraping sound. Guard Jang realized that this was the first step of the second sequence, and the mark was much deeper than before. He knew he wasn't mistaken. Yo-woon knew that stealing another warrior's technique was a big no-no in Murim. He thought he had been blinded by Nano's power and done something unforgivable. He had nothing to say, even if Guard Jang hated him for it. Guard Jang told the young master that he had done well. He didn't care that Yo-woon had learned the technique in secret. He would have taught it to him sooner if it wasn't for the pact of the sixth sex. Yo-woon was surprised, and then he saw that Guard Jang was giving him the key tips to circulate chi for the dagger technique. He wondered why. Guard Jang added that he would also give him the breathing technique, but there would be far better texts in the academy. He told Yo-woon that he would do better to learn those instead. A tear landed on the paper. Yo-woon started to whimper. Guard Jang watched Yo-woon's reaction. Yo-woon, overwhelmed, swore he would never cry again. Guard Zhang thought that it had been 5 years since Lady Hua had passed away, and the young master had been very brave since then, but he was still just a kid who needed his parents. Guard Zhang continued, saying he couldn't be by his side once Yo Woon entered the academy. He suggested Yo Woon let out his tears now and become stronger from then on. Yo Woon thanked him, wiping away his tears. Yo Woon took a deep breath, promising himself no more fear and no more hesitation. He told himself that even though his mother was gone, he still had a home to go back to. The academy gate was now in sight. The crowd murmured, wondering if all the sects of the demonic cult were really here, estimating about 1,000 people. At the same time, some students were nervous now that they were actually at the academy. They knew this academy was also the grand tournament for the minor priesthood, so they had to be careful who they sided with. The new students looked excited, but Li Hemeng didn't see anyone with real fighting spirit this year. What a shame, he thought. Li Hemeng glared, warning the students that this could be the end for them. It was Li Hemeng, the right-hand royal bodyguard, one of the top 5 most powerful warriors in the cult. Li Hemeng noticed that the students in the first row looked promising. They must be the young masters from the 6 sects. The first student was Muyan Cheon from the Shadow sect. Next up was Gyeongun Cheon of the Sword Clan. Then Mujaem Cheon from the Stealth sect looked annoyed. Jongsom Cheon of the Poison sect was also present. At the same time, Yukon Cheon of the Saber sect and Wanrio Cheon of the Musician sect were also there. Li Hemeng mentioned the only female candidate in this year's grand tournament, then asked where student 7, Cheon Yo Woon, was. Yo Woon was told that they couldn't find his badge number, and unfortunately, that number was the only one they couldn't find, so he had to wait until they found it. He figured this was some dirty trick by one of the other 6 sects. Fine. He'd wait. Maybe they didn't want to be aligned with him. Whatever. Nothing good could come from causing a scene this early on. Yo Woon remembered that they were the scumbags who tried to kill him any chance they could. He was sure they'd come straight for his head if they saw him now, too. But he knew what. He survived and made it all the way here. He would become the strongest warrior here at the academy. There were so many people here, so the protagonist knew it was going to be impossible to stand in the front. The crowd started whispering about Yo Woon, who was number 7. They heard he didn't know anything about martial arts and would be the first one out. Yo Woon could already guess what they were whispering about. He just scoffed, thinking they could laugh all they wanted. Oh, there he was, looking ridiculous, standing all alone in the back. Li Hemeng watched, thinking this was how the illegitimate child was trying to get attention. How interesting. Suddenly, bugles started sounding. The crowd started chattering, saying that His Holiness was coming, and they needed to quiet down. The nobles walked by with their usual arrogance. At the same time, the students watched them pass. They kept walking, not paying attention to anyone. Meanwhile, a masked man kept glaring. The nobles kept muttering as they walked. Then a man stumbled forward. Li Hemeng clicked his tongue, asking why he was dressed in such shabby clothes, calling him a drunkard. The drunk man glared at Li Hemeng, asking what the hell the redhead was looking at. He introduced himself as Mad Blade Sob Meng, left-hand royal bodyguard to the patriarch. Then Ragyom Ma, the Lord of Darkness and head royal bodyguard, announced the beginning of the ceremony. At the same time, the camera focused on Cheon Yujong, the patriarch, sitting on his throne. The crowd was buzzing, but Yo Woon could only focus on the patriarch. He was overwhelmed by his father's presence, barely able to look at him. Ragyom Ma shouted, demanding silence from everyone. Ragyom Ma announced that they were ready and bowed to the patriarch. The ceremony was about to begin. Ragyom Ma welcomed all the talented young ones to the academy who would lead the cult's future. The crowd was surprised by his profound breathing technique. At the same time, Yo Woon could clearly hear his voice, even from the back row. Ragyom Ma continued, saying that at this academy, they would hone their skills and become the driving force behind the cult. And the crowd cheered. The crowd bowed, thanking their holiness. Meanwhile, a man glanced sideways. As the crowd listened to the speech, Yo Woon watched them with a cold expression. At the same time, the crowd seemed very excited about the academy. Someone turned around to look at Yo Woon. Meanwhile, Yo Woon's eyes narrowed. The guy thought it was the first time they'd ever met, but he was still so cold. He sighed. The guy thought it was fine. He didn't expect much from him anyway. He hadn't even seen him when his mother passed. Now that the speech was over, it was time to get down to business. As a result, the crowd started chattering. Li Hemeng was getting angry, and it showed on his face. At the same time, the students were flinching, sensing the shift in mood. Li Hemeng looked like he was about about to explode. Lee Ha-meng announced that he was going to make things simple and that they should listen up. Lee Ha-meng explained that at the academy, they would train through 6 stages over 4 years, and each stage would have an exam they could only try once. As a result, the students started murmuring, realizing how serious this was. Lee Ha-meng smirked, saying it looked like they all got the gist of it, and that students who failed would be kicked out. Then, someone lifted his hand to ask a question. One of the students raised his hand, wanting to ask something. Lee Ha-meng got angry and asked who dared to interrupt him. As a result, the student who raised his hand got a jolt of electricity. Lee Ha-meng questioned if the student had heard him. He asked what the student was going to do about it. Lee Ha-meng reminded them that they lost all their privileges as heirs the moment they stepped into the academy. Lee Ha-meng asked if he wanted to be disqualified from the tournament before it even began. The student apologized immediately, realizing he had messed up. Lee Ha-meng knew what they were thinking. They only get one try at each test, so their chances of making it to the end are low. But those who pass each stage will get 3 special rewards. The first reward is a demonic dragon marble. One of the students wondered if it was what he thought it was. Turns out, it's a miracle medicine that can give you the power of 20 years of internal energy training. The students wondered if they could absorb 120 years worth of training if they passed all 6 stages and took all 6 marbles, which would make them masters already. But the more you absorb, the weaker the effects are, and it's hard to absorb the energy in the first place. If it was easy, the masters would have already taken them all. 6 stages, huh? Yo Woon thought to himself that he hasn't trained his internal techniques at all. But if he can pass the tests, he could improve them much quicker with the marbles. The second reward is access to the martial arts manuals. Lee Ha-meng explained that the manual library at the academy has 5 floors. Each time they move on to the next stage, 1 more floor will be unlocked. Lee Ha-meng explained that, depending on how well they do, they'll get to study manuals from the 6 sects and even the royal bodyguards. The students were excited, thinking this was their chance to learn divine techniques and become martial arts masters. Meanwhile, Yo Woon thought that if he's going to survive, access to those manuals is way more important than the marbles. Lee Ha-meng said that he could guarantee that none of them would reach the 5th floor, even in their dreams, so they should just forget about it. Meanwhile, Sob Meng thought that Lee Ha-meng has a knack for getting everyone excited and then making things awkward all of a sudden. He thought everything Lee Ha-meng does is annoying. Lee Ha-meng added that there was one last reward. Lee Ha-meng continued, saying that they would have the opportunity to be granted statuses and positions that they previously couldn't have even dreamed of. One of the students realized that was why even minor priesthood candidates were put on the same level as everyone else there. He thought that's what they meant when they said everything would be changing once they entered the academy, and from that point on, it's survival of the fittest. Lee Ha-meng explained that as they moved through each stage, they would be given statuses like lower warrior, middle warrior, high warrior, sentry, and warden. He added that they shouldn't even worry about the last rank because none of them would ever get there, and most would probably stop at the 3rd rank. Lee Ha-meng continued, saying that it would be fine for those from regular warrior houses, but for those with more prestigious names, it would be a stain on their house's reputation to have their careers cut short at just a measly warrior rank. He asked if they could really say there were 6 stages to the academy's training, since reaching the last stage was pretty much impossible, and that over the hundreds of years the academy had been running, less than 10 people had made it that far. Lee Ha-meng stated that if they could rise through the ranks, their value would be acknowledged at the academy. He added that they might all begin at the same starting point, but as things progressed, they would find themselves at different points within the hierarchy and would have to follow it. One of the students realized that before, just staying alive was the only thing he needed to focus on, but now he would need to beat the competition if he wanted to survive. Lee Ha-meng said that was the gist of how things would go there. He announced that they would begin the first stage examination to assign them to their dorms and groups. One of the students was shocked. The students started muttering, shocked that they were already taking the stage examination. They complained that they weren't supposed to be tested before being taught anything. Lee Ha-meng said that if they couldn't pass the examination, they would be kicked out of the academy. He added that those who failed weren't worthy of even a lower warrior title. Lee Ha-meng explained that the first stage examination would test their basic abilities. He said that to become a warrior of the academy, they should at least be able to harness their internal power. Meanwhile, one of the students looked shocked. Lee Ha-meng said that they still needed people to fulfill the lowly jobs, so they could feel free to slack off. But the protagonist realized that this was why the ladies of the other 6 sects vowed to ensure he never honed his internal powers. He thought that if he didn't pass the examination, he would end up with no status and at the bottom of the hierarchy. Then they would just come and try to kill him in broad daylight. He smirked at the thought. The guy smirked, thinking the system was perfect, because he wouldn't have to dirty his hands trying to kill that disgusting little vermin. But then he looked confused. Everyone looked towards the stage, curious about what was going to happen next. A woman stood there, holding a musical instrument. Lee Hameng announced that Madame Soyuheng, head of the musician sect and fifth elder of the demonic warrior cult, would be proctoring their first examination. At the bottom, Madame Soyuheng held her instrument. Lee Hameng told them that the examination should be a breeze for all of them. He added that if they failed there, they wouldn't even amount to a lower warrior. The guy was surprised, wondering what the head of the musician sect was doing there, since she almost never showed up in public. He wondered if she was going to do what he thought she was going to do. The students started covering their ears. At the same time, Lee Hameng said that if Madame Hang went all out, the students wouldn't make it out alive. He said she was going to go easy on them, so they didn't need to worry. Madame Hang thought the students should be able to handle it for a minute if they had even a little bit of internal power. Lee Hameng announced that those who could withstand Madame Hang's musical force without passing out would pass the first examination. He then yelled to begin, and with that, the students were blasted with a powerful musical force. The students were getting hit hard by the sound waves. One of the students was screaming, saying he could still hear the music even with his ears covered. At the same time, Madame Hang kept playing her instrument. Someone noticed that most of the students in the middle row from the lower sex had already passed out, but the heirs to the sixth sex and those from higher sex were doing just fine. One of the guys thought this was pretty strong stuff. Meanwhile, Madame Hang kept playing. The guy thought that as heirs to the sixth sex, they had taken lots of medicine from a young age to cleanse their bodies and foster their internal power. He figured that trash with no internal power must be on the floor by now. The sound waves kept hitting the students, but one of them felt like something was off. He thought that something didn't feel right. Madame Hang started strumming the instrument faster and faster. The student couldn't take it anymore. He wondered why Madame Hang was doing this to them. He was starting to feel really bad. Madame Hang's eyes widened as she wondered why he wasn't fainting. It was Yo Woon Cheon who was still standing strong. Yo Woon was confused because over half the people in the drill hall had fainted. He wondered if they had all suffered internal injuries, and then he wondered how he was still fine. The nanomachines explained that the sound waves from the mandolin performance had created powerful frequencies, and emergency defense mode was activated to block the sound waves after detecting possible severe bodily injuries. Yo Woon realized that the nanomachines made sure he wouldn't hear the sound of the mandolin. Nano confirmed that he had temporarily blocked off the bodily functions that detect sounds to defend against external trauma. Yeo Woon asked how he could hear him right now, and Nano said that he was relaying the information directly to his brain. Yo Woon admitted that he still didn't understand him sometimes. Meanwhile, Lee Hamung glared with his red eyes. One of the students shivered. Yo Woon asked Nano if he could protect him from that evil gaze coming from Lee Hameng, but then he quickly changed his mind. He could tell that Madame Heng was getting impatient with her performance, and the power coming from her music was a lot stronger than before. Lee Hameng realized it must be because of Yo Woon. He had heard that the young master had no internal powers, but it didn't seem true since he wasn't even using any key adjustment techniques to keep calm. Lee Hameng thought he had never seen such an interesting outcome since he was appointed as an academy deputy, and he wondered how long Yo Woon would last. Meanwhile, some students started bleeding from their ears. One of the students realized that 20 years of tuning his internal power wasn't enough to block this music. He thought the minute should be over soon, and he had to stay calm to protect the reputation of their sect. He wondered why Madame Hang was playing so intensely, and by her face, she looked really angry too. The music was getting intense, and one of the students suddenly yelled to wait a minute. The young lady looked back, wondering what was happening. At the same time, the other students were also confused. They wondered why he looked so startled, and if something was going on behind them. Turning around, they could hear the music getting louder. The students couldn't believe that someone like Yo Woon, who didn't have any internal power, could stay so calm. It just didn't make any sense to them. Yo Woon was talking to Nano, wondering if he was just imagining things, but it looked like everyone was angry at him. He asked Nano to analyze their facial expressions. Nano showed him that the facial muscle conditions suggested emotions of absurdity, surprise, petulance, and anger. Yo Woon thought none of this felt real because he couldn't hear anything, but he could definitely see their hostility towards him. There was no doubt that they were annoyed that he was doing just fine and thought he had no internal powers. Yo Woon realized that if he made it past this first test, no one would believe he didn't have internal powers. He asked Nano if there was any way he could give himself internal injuries on purpose. Nano asked if he meant injuring his organs. Yo Woon confirmed it, but Nano didn't suggest hurting himself on purpose. Yo Woon said it was fine and that one Once her performance was over, he wanted Nano to hurt his organs and make him throw up battle marks. Nano agreed and said he was starting the forced internal damage. The minute was almost up. The woman playing the instrument wondered how the lowly trash, who couldn't be older than 15, was still standing. She refused to let it end like this. How dare he insult her like this? She would raise her powers and tear him apart. There was no way he could handle this. Lee Hameng thought this was dangerous. At the same time, the woman kept playing the instrument. Madam Heng kept playing, and the sound made people want to throw up. Lee Hameng yelled at Madam Heng to stop because it was too dangerous. Madam Heng ignored Lee Hameng and kept playing. At the same time, the students were all passed out on the ground. The students were coughing and barely able to stand. The guy with the bottle thought that if she had turned it up even a little bit more, no one would have passed the first test. He couldn't believe she was acting like that. Madam Heng wondered what was going on and realized she'd gotten angry and used half her power on that little brat. The woman was angry that the brat broke the rules. She blamed Yo Won for everything. Yo Won twitched while a student started to feel sick. The student started vomiting battle marks while Lee Hameng looked worried and Madam Heng kept playing. Another student looked up, confused about what was happening. A student fell to the ground, coughing up a ton of battle marks. People around him were wondering what had happened. The student looked up, realizing it was the nanomachine's fault. It had done damage to his organs to make him throw up as much battle marks as possible. He realized he wasn't dying, after all. He kept coughing, battle marks splattering everywhere. Lee Hameng realized that if the student died during the exam, the responsibility would fall on him as the academy deputy. He couldn't let the kid die, since he shared battle marks with the Holy One. Lee Hameng rushed forward, grabbing the student. He asked if he was all right. The nanomachine told him that he was suffering from battle marks loss and would fix his organs. Lee Hameng was holding Yo Won, who had just passed out. He told him that he didn't have to act so tough and could have just fainted. Lee Hameng was worried, thinking that the young master was in critical condition. He wondered how strong his internal powers were to have endured all of that. Then, Lee Hameng realized that Yo Won didn't have any internal powers at all. Lee Hameng was shocked, saying that Yo Won was just a reckless little brat. He didn't expect much from the unlucky 7th young lord. Lee Hameng thought that Yo Won made it through the first examination with no internal powers and only through his own determination. He waved for the demonic way. Lee Hameng ordered everyone to bow and take Yo Won to the infirmary. Lying in someone's arms, covered in battle marks, Yo Won begged the nanomachine to hurry and heal him. Madam Heng was confused. She thought he was doing fine against her music, but he had suffered serious injuries. Then, Lee Hameng moved with incredible speed. He told Madam Heng that she had crossed the line. Madam Heng asked what he meant by that. He shot back, saying that she almost killed the boy. Madam Heng wondered if the kid had weak internal powers, but then realized that he didn't have any to begin with. Lee Hameng explained that he had tried to stimulate him with raw energy to see if he would get a reaction, but nothing happened, and his pulse was the same. Madam Heng was shocked. She couldn't believe that he could endure her musical force without even the slightest internal power. If what Lee Hameng was saying was true, the boy should have fainted like the rest of the students. Lee Hameng said that Yo Won had suffered severe internal injuries and had endured her music solely through his own determination. Madam Heng was surprised, commenting that the boy had a shockingly strong will to survive. Lee Hameng thought that if it weren't for the boy's low status, he would have taken him as his student, but he knew that nothing good could come from defying the 6 sex. Suddenly, Shob Meng started chugging down alcohol from his gourd. Shob Meng was impressed that the kid had endured all that just through his own will. He thought that was pretty wild. Lee Hameng told him to mind his own business and go get drunk in some lonely corner like he usually does. Shob Meng scoffed and said, screw him. He was going to leave anyway. Then he told the redhead to get lost, adding that he'd be dead in a ditch by now if it wasn't for Sir Ma. He warned him to watch his mouth. Lee Hameng shot back, saying he didn't want to hear any of that from Shob Meng's alcohol-soaked mouth. He added that if anything, Shob Meng would be the one buried in the ground if it wasn't for Sir Ma. He demanded to know what Shob Meng had said. Suddenly, the two bodyguards were at each other's throats, their energy clashing violently. At the same time, the crowd watching could feel the raw power of their attacks. The energy in the air was becoming really unstable. The left and right-hand bodyguards were really going at it. The ground was cracking and breaking under the force of their attacks. Seob Meng scoffed, saying, "Forget it." He was out of there, calling them little wusses as he walked away. Seob Meng looked at the students sprawled out on the ground, saying they had no grit these days. He grumbled that it was all because of a little mandolin playing, but he thought that one student was different. Seob Meng said he liked Yo-woon and that he had his eye on him. So, the story shifts to the Demonic Academy's main building. Inside the infirmary, Dr. Baek Jong-myung was writing in his book. Suddenly, someone shouted that there was a patient. The guy yelled again that there was a patient and punched the doctor. The doctor was shocked as two guys with a stretcher walked in, saying there was a real patient. The doctor was excited that there was a patient on the first day. He thought the Demonic Academy was the best and wondered what was up with the patient. He heard that the patient was Baek Jong-woo's student, but he seemed crazy about medical practice. The doctor told them this wasn't the time to be like this and told them to come in. The doctor looked at Yo-woon on the stretcher, wondering how hard the test could be for a person to be in this kind of condition. He asked if Yo-woon got stabbed in the stomach, but realized he was wounded internally. The doctor was surprised that this was from internal damage. He was told that since Yo-woon didn't have any nagong, the left guardian asked that he take special care of him. The doctor thought that in the 10 years he'd been his teacher's student, he had never seen so much battle marks from an internal injury. Anyway, they said that since they dropped him off at the infirmary, they would be on their way. Then they started walking away. One of the men asked the other why he was so slow when they were busy. The other guy replied that it was nothing. The man with the beard looked back and said that the kid's complexion looked a lot better than before and wondered if he was mistaken. At that moment, Yo-woon looked at his hand, which was covered in battle marks. The doctor felt Yo-woon's pulse. The young master thought to himself that he had forgotten that he was in the infirmary and almost healed all the internal damage. The protagonist thought that it still hurt a lot, but he had to endure it until the doctor was done. The doctor thought that the pulse was clearly irregular and fast, so he must have taken a lot of damage. The doctor thought that it was still very weird, and even if someone bit their tongue, they wouldn't bleed this much. The doctor figured he'd start with some acupuncture. Suddenly, the doctor got hit by a bunch of needles and screamed. The doctor was super scared and asked if the right guardian was okay. Seob Meng showed up drinking and asked what was going on. The doctor was surprised to see him and said that the little guy, who used to cling to his teacher like a coward, had become the academy's doctor and that he still had that annoying tone. Seob Meng asked what the right guardian was doing at the infirmary, since he shouldn't be hurt at all. Lee Ha-meng said he didn't want to be there either, telling him to rest well. Seob Meng watched him leave, saying he could never figure Lee Ha-meng out. He turned his head back to look at Yo-woon, saying that he was a very interesting kid. Yo-woon was still lying in bed, seemingly surprised by something. Yo-woon was lying in bed, still pretending to be hurt, but he was thinking about something. He wondered why someone was in the infirmary. He suddenly smelled alcohol. It was Seob Meng. Seob Meng was standing over him, asking why he was pretending to be asleep. Seob Meng's hand was glowing with energy. Seob Meng attacked, but Yo-woon managed to block it while still lying down. He was surprised. Someone was watching the fight and was stunned by what he saw. He couldn't believe that someone could raise a person without even touching them. He thought that Yo-woon must be the right guardian of the school. Yo-woon was sitting up, surrounded by blue energy. He wondered if he had been sat up using internal energy. Our hero tried to move, but he couldn't. His body wasn't fixed yet. Seob Meng was still standing over him, smiling. He warned that if Yo-woon kept pretending to sleep, he would hit him in the face. Yo-woon realized he had been caught. Yo-woon was shocked that he had been caught, wondering how Seob Meng knew he was awake. Seob Meng just smirked. Seob Meng started laughing, finding the whole situation pretty funny. Yo-woon looked up at him, but Seob Meng just kept laughing, saying that he shouldn't be so bold in front of a guardian. Seob Meng grabbed the young master by the neck, explaining that any experienced warrior could tell if someone was faking sleep just by listening to their breathing. Yo-woon was surprised that Seob Meng could tell just from his breathing. Seob Meng explained that the average breathing count for a young man is about 12 to 20 per minute, but Yo-woon's breathing was 8 times that, which made it unnatural. He added that he didn't need any unnecessary information. Seob Meng started laughing, saying that kids these days didn't have the insides that Yo-woon did, adding that he was pretty good. Yo-woon wondered if Seob Meng had come because he noticed he was pretending. Seob Meng looked down at the young master, saying that kids these days didn't have any endurance and always wanted to take the easy way out when things got a little difficult. He admitted that he didn't endure it with sheer will. Seob Meng pointed at Yo Won, telling him that he had the will that the others didn't. Sob Meng told the right guardian that the patient wasn't doing so well and should get treatment first. He then told the other man to wait because an adult was talking. Suddenly, Yo Won coughed up battle marks. At the same time, Sob Meng pointed out that Yo Won's face didn't look good. Meanwhile, Yo Won coughed up even more battle marks. Then, someone noticed that he had let go of his energy. As a result, Yo Won fell to the ground. He complained that his neck hurt and that he would get to the point. Suddenly, someone announced that he wanted to take the kid as his student. Lee Hameng was grinning like a maniac. Sob Meng looked at Lee Hameng, confused. Yo Won was still lying on the ground, hurt. Lee Hameng didn't care and started drinking from his flask. Sob Meng was shocked, staring at him, while Yo Won was still out cold. Lee Hameng was serious. He said he wanted to take the kid as his student. Lee Hameng looked down at the kid, asking if anyone didn't know who he was. Yo Won, still on the ground, asked if the 6 clans wouldn't hate him for taking him in. Lee Hameng just laughed. He asked what they could even do about it. Lee Hameng added that they'd still have to compete with each other, with or without him. Yo Won was lying down, thinking that this was a great chance, but he wondered if it was a trap. Seob Meng was watching him quietly. Seob Meng thought that this was the famous 7th prince. He knew they'd play tricks at the academy, but making him lose so much battle marks was too much. Yo Won didn't know what to say because the offer was so sudden. He'd also have a teacher in the academy. He was worried that he'd look like he was begging to be his student. Sob Meng figured the kid had a lot of doubts, which was to be expected after the life he'd lived. Yo Won finally said that he would do it. Sob Meng was smiling, saying that if he wasn't convinced, he'd offer something that he couldn't turn down. Seob Meng stood over him. He asked what the paper was, saying it was what he needed to survive in the academy. Sob Meng smirked, pointing out that he was stuck in the infirmary as soon as he got to the academy. He asked if he wasn't worried about falling behind, even though he was able to pass the first test with sheer will. He wondered if someone without Negong like him could pass the second test. Seob Meng pointed out that anyone who wanted to be a warrior needed to think a step ahead of others, asking if he was planning on staying in the infirmary for 2 weeks and getting pushed behind from the start. He knew that while he was stuck in this place, the others would certainly move forward a lot. He couldn't deny that, but he'd have to stay here for a bit to avoid suspicion. Seob Meng took a swig from his jug, looking like he was about to start something. Sob Meng asked if he knew why that redhead jerk sent him here. The left guardian, he continued, asking if it wasn't weird. There were many other kids that were damaged internally. Seob Meng asked why the left guardian didn't send them here instead. Seob Meng explained that most people of Murim could heal internal damage through meditation, but it would be faster if they were treated by a doctor or medicine. So, what did he mean? Seob Meng pointed out that the other kids could at least try to heal themselves, so there was no reason to send them to the infirmary. Yo Won realized that's why he was all alone in the infirmary, because he couldn't even heal himself. Sob Meng thought to himself that he was almost there with the kid and wondered if he should wrap things up now. Sob Meng scoffed, thinking about a kid that couldn't even meditate to heal. Sob Meng asked if he thought someone like that could cure internal damage in a short amount of time. Yo Won thought to himself that it was possible because he had the nano. Yo Won was still lying down when he realized he needed Negong to reach the next stage. He suddenly remembered something else. He recalled that if he passed the first test, he would get the medicine ball and access to the academy's library. Sob Meng started laughing, which confused the boy. Sob Meng said that the redhead forgot to mention something important. He smirked, explaining that the academy's library wasn't a place where people could just come and go as they pleased. Yo Won was shocked when he heard that he could only enter the library after passing a test. He shouted, "What?" Sob Meng grinned, starting to explain. He told the boy that the library was very secure. Yo Won was silent for a moment, processing everything. Sob Meng continued, saying that he could only stay on the first floor for 2 hours. Sob Meng chuckled, saying that there were limits, and it was like crossing mountains all the time. He added that the time he got to spend there would increase as he went higher up. Sob Meng continued, explaining that he wasn't allowed to write anything down. He had to memorize everything before he left. He added that memorizing just 2 books was already a lot. Yo Won realized that this gave him a huge advantage. With the nanomachine's scanning skills, our hero thought he could probably hundreds of books in 2 hours. Sob Meng finished by saying that 4 years at the demonic academy would really test the boy's limits, especially since he didn't have any inner energy. Yo Won wondered if Sob Meng was implying that he was different from the others, since most of them had trained in their clan's martial arts, and he had neither martial arts nor inner energy to survive the threat of the six clans. Yo-won wondered if he really needed to become Lee Ha-meng's student. Yo-won noticed a paper lying next to his head. He wondered if it was the breath of Nagong. Lee Ha-meng chuckled, saying that Yo-won wasn't as dumb as he thought. He confirmed that it was indeed the breath of Nagong and offered to teach it to him right away if he became his student. Yo-won clenched his fist, thinking that even if he wasn't sure about Lee Ha-meng's intentions, he needed someone on his side. He realized this was his chance to learn the breath of Nagong, something he couldn't because of his oath with the six clans. Lee Ha-meng smirked. Without hesitation, Yo-won dropped to his knees. He asked Lee Ha-meng to accept him as a student, acknowledging him as his right guardian. Lee Ha-meng smirked, enjoying this. A student must bow to his teacher twice. Lee Ha-meng used his energy to lift the boy, telling him to get up. Yo-won looked shocked as he was lifted into the air by Lee Ha-meng's power. Lee Ha-meng declared that the battle marks of Cheon shouldn't bow to anyone other than the Lord himself. Lee Ha-meng told him to rest for the day and to memorize the points of the breath of Nagong until he got back. Lee Ha-meng told his henchmen to take good care of his new student before hitting him on the head. Yo-won was still lying down, but Lee Ha-meng was already leaving with a smile on his face, but his breath stank as always. Baki asked if our hero was okay, saying it was as chaotic as if a storm had passed by. Baki congratulated the boy on becoming the right guardian's student. Yo-won thanked him for that. The man checked his pulse, saying that his internal damage had messed him up pretty bad and that he would be back with acupuncture tools soon. Yo-won just said okay as he lay there. He thought about how many opportunities he'd been given, thanks to Nano and the right guardian. In the middle of all these enemies at the academy, he thought about his mother and guard Zhang. He realized that for once, there was someone on his side. The demonic academy's practice field was vast, full of students. At the same time, some people were sitting, probably waiting for something. Meanwhile, another group was standing and looking in the same direction. Lee Ha-meng told the left guardian that he would report the results of the first test. Hao Jinchang reported that 415 people passed, including Cadet 7, who was taken to the infirmary. Lee Ha-meng thought that was 200 less than the first test from 10 years ago, and that Elder Hang's energy waves were too much. Lee Ha-meng figured that the ones who failed probably didn't think it was fair. One student yelled that he didn't pass out, and he shouldn't be kicked out just because he had bubbles coming out of his mouth. He said it wasn't fair. Another student asked if they didn't understand. He asked if they thought they could live their whole lives in service or farming, and how he was supposed to live a life like that. A man said that it seemed like they couldn't accept the results. He agreed with them and said there was no other choice. He commanded that the rebelling ones be kicked out of the demonic academy. A dude yelled as he got punched right in the face. He coughed, and then another man punched him. The force of the punch sent the guy flying backwards. A man with white hair clicked his tongue, saying that the ones in front had great skills, and the ones who were kicked out wouldn't be able to beat them. He figured that because they were being stubborn, they wouldn't learn anything. Lee Ha-meng said that if it were him, he'd say it was unfair too. He said that it was because of Cadet 7 that the first test was so hard. The man looked down at the bodies and said that they didn't have luck or skills. He added that it was also their fate. Lee Ha-meng said that among the ones who passed the first test, there were a good amount of exceptional kids, and asked if the other man thought so too. The speaker continued, noting that most of them had internal damage and were in meditation. He finished by saying that 8 of the candidates of the 6 clans in the upper clans seemed to have made it through easily. The man said that some of the cadets were already way stronger than the others. He explained that to not get hurt by Elder Hang's energy waves, someone would need to train for hundreds of years. He added that these students were on a whole other level. The first was Cheon Mu Yun from the Dark Clan, and the other was Cheon Yu Chan from the Blade Clan. The man went on, saying that both of them took the energy waves without even moving. He heard that the Dark Clan and the Blade Clan would be the ones fighting for the win. Lee Ha-meng smirked, stating that it was just as he thought. Someone thought that this was going to be interesting. Someone congratulated them on passing the first test. They would get a bronze medal, showing that they were now part of the lower ranks of the academy, and for the next 4 years, they would train as cadets. The students were told that here at the demonic academy, they weren't allowed to answer with yes or no. They had to answer motto, and anything else was like asking to repeat an order. Lee Ha-meng then told them to start organizing into groups. Someone was ready to start the treatment, now that he was done preparing. The wounded man asked for the doctor. The doctor corrected him, saying his name was Baek Jong-myung. Baek Jong-myung said that instead of just calling him doctor, he should include his last name. Dr. Baek then asked if his condition was that bad, and apologized for having to say that to a cadet of the demonic academy. The wounded man was shocked to hear that it would take 11 to 15 days before he could even try out for the next test. He screamed, asking what he was supposed to do. He thought to himself, what if Nano started healing him? The treatment would be over instantly, but if he healed up too fast, they would get suspicious. The protagonist thought that if he got the normal treatment, he would fall behind in training. Besides, he didn't know anything about the tests after the first one, since he had been taken to the infirmary. The other man told him not to be disappointed. He said that if he was treated by a normal doctor, it would take months, but it would be a lot shorter because he was Baek Jong-woo's student. The man told him that it would still take a long time, even with training. The wounded man said that this might not help, but he would pretend he didn't know the other man was learning martial arts from the right guardian. He thanked him, saying he would repay him in the future. The other man replied that it was fine, and that he didn't expect much anyway. The man suddenly spun around, telling him that since they would be doing acupuncture, he was going to have to take off his clothes. The man thought to himself about this kid. The man thought to himself that even though he knew that Yo-won didn't learn any martial arts, his body was a lot nicer than he thought. The man wondered if he didn't get it through Naegong. Did he learn Weigong? The man told him that the first one goes in the middle of his chest. Suddenly, the nanomachine sensed an attempt to damage the user's body with a sharp iron needle and activated self-defense mode. Yo-won yelled at the nano, telling it to stop because the doctor was doing this for treatment. He asked if it didn't know how to differentiate between an attack and treatment. The nanomachines deactivated their self-defense mode, like Yo-won told them to. He was just glad he survived. The nanomachines warned that if he didn't tell them about treatments beforehand, they would consider any damage to his body as an attack. They said they understood his instructions. Yo-won looked at his stomach, confused. He realized his stomach was starting to hurt less. The system then started to retrieve information from its built-in acupuncture diagram. The nanomachines explained that the acupuncture needles were placed down his chest, under his heart, and on his arm. They pinpointed the exact spots that enhance regeneration in the stomach area. Yo-won realized he was able to understand things easier with the information the nanomachines transferred. Then, someone told him to take a nap while the acupuncture did its thing, because he was making them blush by staring. He said that, but he couldn't sleep with the nanomachines explaining everything. He was lying down, thinking about toes, under the knee, and shins. Suddenly, he gasped. Yo-won wondered if the nanomachines could treat his internal injuries. The treatment would go faster, right? But he realized if he got healed too quickly, they'd get suspicious. Yo-won asked if he could be healed, but still look wounded. Turns out, after the treatment, it's possible to mess with his pulse to make it look like his organs are damaged. Yo-won said he was only asking just in case, but he was glad it was possible. If he could fool Dr. Baek for a couple of weeks, he'd have a chance to learn from the right guardian. Yo-won told the nanomachines to heal him now and fool Dr. Baek when he comes to check on him. He understood, Master. The nanomachines confirmed they were starting self-recovery mode as commanded by the user. The sun was setting over the mountains. Suddenly, a man yelled for the cadets to pay attention. He then ordered them to get in line. Lee Hameng spoke to the cadets. Lee Hameng announced that he was going to explain their next test. Lee Hameng explained that until the third test, all cadets would take the test at the same time. To become a mid-level warrior, they needed to know tactics and strategies. He then told them they only had 20 days. The cadets started freaking out, saying 20 days wasn't enough time to learn all those tactics. Lee Hameng asked if they were curious why there were 20 groups. He said that in 3 weeks, only 10 groups would move on. The cadets realized that half of them would be kicked out. One of them complained that they didn't have any top cadets in their group. The cadets knew that the 6 clans probably had an advantage in the tests. Lee Hameng said that this was the first and last test that required them to work together. So if they wanted to compete, they could just fail together. He was still a man that was good at making people feel bad. Lee Hameng then announced that today's schedule was done and they could return to their rooms and rest. He added that starting tomorrow, they would be taught by the staff standing in front of them, and they'd be teaching them tactics and techniques very kindly. The cadets questioned if they were really going to be kind. mind, since they were the ones who beat up the rebellious cadets. And just like that, the instructor dismissed everyone. The cadets started to head back to their rooms. It was Group 8 instructor Im Pyong. Im Pyong noticed that one of the cadets was still around, so he asked him why he was still there. It was Spring Clan candidate Cheon Moo Kum, and he said that he had a question for the instructor. Im Pyong reminded him that he couldn't answer questions related to training. Cheon Moo Kum understood, so Im Pyong asked what he wanted to know. He answered that he was pretty sure he'd be the leader of Group 8. Im Pyong explained that the selection for team leaders was supposed to happen tomorrow, but the 6 clans always found the rules ridiculous. Cheon Moo Kum then pointed out that Cadet 7, who was assigned to their group, was in the infirmary. Im Pyong asked what that had to do with anything. Cheon Moo Kum said that with one person missing from a group test, he didn't want their whole group to fail. The guy explained that because Cadet 7 didn't go to the ceremony, he wouldn't know what was going on, so he wanted to tell him everything. The other man just stared back without saying anything. Suddenly, another guy with an evil grin said that Cadet 7 was in the same group as him, and his luck had run out. He added that he would personally go to the infirmary to mess with Cadet 7's limbs. The first guy agreed that it was a good idea, saying that the other man seemed to understand the basics and complimented him on his first day. The instructor said he would take their advice and deliver the information to Cadet 7 himself. He seemed really mad about it. One of the cadets reached out, telling the instructor that he didn't need to do that and that he could go himself. The instructor gave him a death stare, explaining that the main building was off limits to cadets unless they had special permission. The cadet realized he wouldn't be able to get into the main building. He was starting to panic because so many things were going wrong. He knew he was a candidate from the Spring Clan, but that meant nothing here. He was out of options. The cadet understood and then asked the instructor one last favor before telling him to head back to his dorm. The instructor stopped, asking if there was something else he wanted to say. The cadet asked if he could at least know when Cadet 7 would start joining them. The instructor said there was no problem with that and that he would tell him tomorrow since it was too late today. The guy thanked him. Now that things had come to this, the cadet knew he'd have to wait until the protagonist returned to their dorm. Someone yelled at the guy on the ground to hurry up and get better, calling him a lowly bastard. The guy looked down with a nasty grin, promising to make the loser feel so much pain that he would wish for death. It was night at the Demonic Academy's main building. Turns out, the guy with the head bandage was going to be stuck in the infirmary for 14 days. The man confirmed it, saying that the internal damage was so bad, he would have to stay for at least 14 days. One of the men sighed, saying that if he stayed there that long, it would be hard for him to get to the top level. He then asked if there was anything that could make it go faster. The other man replied that that's what he was asking, saying that if only Cadet 7 had Nagong, but Cadet 7 had none at all. The man said that since he didn't have it, there was no other option but to take a long time, adding that the second test was in only 3 weeks. The man couldn't believe that he would have to be hospitalized for 2 weeks. He didn't want his group to be eliminated just because of that one guy. Meanwhile, another man appeared, asking if he could speak to Cadet 7, saying that he had a lot to tell him. The man thought that he was sleeping right now, so it would be hard to do. He wondered if he should wake him up, but decided not to, saying that he'd come back tomorrow, since he'd be here tomorrow anyway. And with that, the man said goodbye and left. A man watched someone, thinking about how he only barely managed to pass the first test. The man clicked his tongue, not impressed. He walked into the room, thinking this must be the end of the guy's luck. Inside, Yo Woon was sleeping soundly. Outside, the moon shone brightly in the night sky. The night was dark, and the wind was blowing. Someone was moving fast through the forest. They were moving so fast, it was almost hard to see them. The figure stopped in front of a building. The curtains inside were blowing in the wind. Yo Woon's expression was serious. Suddenly, someone got kicked hard. The protagonist was sent flying, crashing through the paper wall. A man laughed, announcing that the student's teacher had arrived. Yo Woon looked up, shocked, and asked if it was the teacher. Turns out, Sob Meng was right behind him, breathing pure alcohol fumes right into Yo Woon's face. The guy took another swig from his bottle, hiccuping as he asked if Yo Woon wasn't going to greet him. Yo Woon turned around and greeted his teacher good morning. Sob Meng seemed satisfied and asked if he'd finished the homework he gave him yesterday. Yo Woon looked confused, wondering what homework he was talking about. Sob Meng asked if he was talking about the breath of Nagong, reminding him that he told him to memorize it all before he came back. Yo Woon thought back, remembering that he was taken to the infirmary and treated just yesterday. Sob Meng looked annoyed, asking if he possibly didn't memorize everything. Yo-won was glad he was treated by the nanomachines beforehand, saying that of course he memorized it. Seob-meng was surprised that he memorized all of it while he was sick, admitting that he only said that to provoke him. Lee Ha-meng said that Yo-won did a good job on the homework he gave him, and Yo-won thanked him for the compliment. Lee Ha-meng wondered if he came too early, asking if he was tired, but then said that wasn't it. Lee Ha-meng was glad, saying he would tell him this because he had to know anyway. Lee Ha-meng told him that he could only teach him for 2 weeks, and Yo-won was shocked. Lee Ha-meng explained that he could come see him in the infirmary, but once he went to his dorm, he wouldn't be able to contact him. Lee Ha-meng realized that Yo-won couldn't have known about his situation since he was in the hospital when he arrived. Lee Ha-meng explained that he had to work as a main teacher during the day, so he could only come early or people would get suspicious. Lee Ha-meng continued, explaining that it was against the rules to receive training from outsiders in the demonic academy. If he got caught, it would only make things worse. Yo-won thanked him for his consideration, saying that he thought Lee Ha-meng would be stubborn, but he was paying a lot of attention. Lee Ha-meng agreed, saying that since they didn't have much time, they should get started. Yo-won was surprised, asking if he meant right now. Lee Ha-meng, looking impatient, reminded him that they didn't have much time to waste. Yo-won understood and turned around to sit on the ground. Lee Ha-meng yelled at him to hurry up. Yo-won wondered why he was doing all this. Lee Ha-meng told him it was a good thing that he had memorized his breathing technique of 1,000 martials. Lee Ha-meng placed his hand on Yo-won's chest. Lee Ha-meng told him that because they didn't have much time, he would stuff the flow into him. Yo-won was confused and asked what he meant by stuffing it in. Lee Ha-meng explained that it was a sophisticated way his great-grandfather created, and that Yo-won didn't need to feel the chi because his teacher would do everything for him. Lee Ha-meng told Yo-won to clench his jaw, warning him that if he screamed and the guards came, it would be the end. Yo-won screamed in pain. Lee Ha-meng told him to shut his mouth. At the same time, the nanomachines started analyzing the intangible energy that had entered Yo-won's battle marks. The system identified the energy as chi or chakra, and it began to analyze the effect it was having on the young master's body. Yo-won realized that the instructor's strong naegong was forcing his veins to open, but it was too much for him to handle. Lee Ha-meng wondered what was happening with the kid. Lee Ha-meng couldn't believe Yo-won hadn't learned anything. He couldn't find any blockages in his body. He noticed that Yo-won's muscles looked like they had been training, but as far as Lee Ha-meng knew, he hadn't learned any martial arts. Lee Ha-meng wondered if the Lord was involved. The woman smiled. Lee Ha-meng guessed that out of all his 7 wives, the Lord only cared about Lady Hua, so maybe he cared for this child secretly. The man grinned, saying that things had turned out great. He figured that with Yo-won in that state, it should only take about a week to create a good amount of naegong. Meanwhile, back at the demonic academy dorms, someone punched with incredible force. The guy in the suit followed up with a powerful kick. The man screamed, calling him Prince, and asking if he was okay. The other guys told him to get a hold of himself and asked who he thought he was, attacking Cheon Jongsum of the Poison Clan. The man with the cuts on his face replied, asking if it mattered who he was or who the other guy was. Baekgi said that the demonic academy was only based on strength, and that now that he'd won, he'd be in charge of Group 12 and focused, trying to memorize the movements. He took a deep breath. Hu Bong asked if he had memorized the flow. Yo-won replied that he remembered it clearly. Hu Bong laughed, saying that this first trial must have been pretty painful, but it was the best way to teach those without naegong. The woman told him that his goal was to get enough naegong in 7 days, 1 week. Hu Bong then asked if he understood. Yo-won could see that Hu Bong was tired, so he figured he should be able to endure at least that much. Yo-won replied that he would succeed as much as Hu Bong cared about him, adding that he could say some commendable things. The woman announced that today's training was over. The man reminded him to not forget the breathing method and the flow, making sure he knew it. The man said he would leave him be now, telling him to take care of himself as Yo-won thanked him. Yo-won looked down, thinking that surely he'd be able to build up naegong in a week. At the Demonic Academy practice field, many students were training. Lee Ha-meng figured it was all going as expected. Turns out, those kids had become the leaders of their groups, and a lot of them had messed up faces after the night before. The reason why the instructors weren't at the dorms on the first day was to get the students to fight each other and establish ranks themselves. The man was surprised. Group 12 should have had the candidate from the Poison Clan leading it, but Cadet 18 18 is the leader? Looking at the students, the man could tell they had been through a brutal fight. Li Hemeng thought that anyone who dared attack a prince with a black name tag had insides and was skilled. Li Hemeng figured they should start cadet training. He said, "All right." The man on the platform called for everyone's attention. The man announced that for 7 days, every morning, they would learn basic tactics and strategies in the auditorium. Then in the afternoon, they would train at the practice field. The instructor demanded if they understood. The academy loomed in the distance. The instructor ordered everyone to head to the auditorium, telling Group 1 to move forward. Someone called another a stupid bastard. Cheon Kum was asked how he could fall in the rankings like that. The guy with the long hair smirked, saying that the Poison clan was nothing without poison, and that they were even worse than the lower clans. The guy looked up, clearly angry, and yelled that he would get his revenge. His eye twitched with fury. Another guy turned away, saying that the first guy was calling Baek Gi a jerk and insulting him. The angry man shouted that he would make Baek Gi regret being in the same group as him, and that he could have fun playing the leader game by himself. It was night at the Demonic Academy dorms. Cadet 3 was standing by. Cadet 3, whose name was Motto, answered the instructor, clearly flattered by the praise for his performance during the formation training. The instructor then dropped some news. Cadet 7 would have to stay in the infirmary for a couple of weeks. The instructor sighed, wondering if someone without Nagong, like Cadet 7, would even be able to catch up after being gone for so long. The instructor said he'd be visiting Cadet 7 again that day. He told the rest of them to train hard or study during their free time, then called out Motto. Suddenly, someone punched another student right in the face. The student went flying, and right after, Cheon Kum was told to be quiet. Another guy said it would only make things harder if he kept poking at that temper. The guy got angry, wondering how the hell he could be stuck in the infirmary for weeks. Ja Hyun, a loyal clan member, and Cadet 80 said that if the doctor said it, it must be true. But the prince completely lost it, yelling that it was obvious the bastard was just pretending to be hurt. The prince was so angry about that damn bastard with his filthy bloodline that he kicked a pillar in half, grinding his teeth just thinking about him lying there comfortably. One of his men asked him to calm down. The guy had an idea, suggesting that instead of getting angry for no reason, they do something about it. The prince seemed intrigued by the idea. Days passed. The doctor yawned, bored out of his mind. He sighed, complaining that it had been 5 days without any patients, and he was dying of boredom. He hoped that Cheon Yo-woon wouldn't be his last patient ever. Suddenly, the doctor screamed. Wondering what the hell had just happened. An instructor, Pyung, rushed in, carrying a cadet who'd been hurt during training with real swords. He explained that he didn't pull out the sword, not wanting to make things worse. The doctor's eyes sparkled. He told the instructor to move the cadet to a bed, happy that a patient had finally arrived. The doctor was impressed that the treatment was almost done and said it was expected from the student of the best. He added that it was all because the instructor didn't pull out the sword. The doctor checked the kid's condition. Fortunately, the cadet hadn't injured any vitals and was very lucky. The instructor pulled back the curtains, stepping into the room. He chuckled, saying it seemed like the doctor was worried for no reason. He added that he was responsible for the students until the second test and that 2 of them were already in the infirmary. The doctor explained that he had stitched the wound, but it was deep, so the cadet would need to be hospitalized. He seemed surprised that the cadet would need to be hospitalized. The doctor said that it wouldn't be as long as it was for Cadet 7. Just 3 days should be enough. The instructor sighed. The instructor said he'd be back after the afternoon training was over and asked the doctor to take care of Cadet 23. The instructor thought to himself that it was bad timing for this to happen as soon as they started training with real swords, and that he was going to have to write a lot of apologies. Nearby, a candle burned in the darkness. The light revealed Yo-woon, sleeping in his bed. He was covered in bandages from his recent fight. The protagonist stared intensely at the knives and tools laid out before him. The hand gripped the knife tightly, and the person holding it wondered if he should start by making sure the guy couldn't walk. Nearby, a man peeked through the curtains, looking worried. He looked down at the foot he was holding and said that he was only doing this to survive. He brought the knife closer and told the person not to blame him. Suddenly, the man screamed in pain as electricity surged through his body. The axe on the ground crackled with electricity. Yo-woon sat near the guy he just shocked and said, "Of course." He looked forward and thought to himself that it was just as he expected. The building stood silently under the moonlight. Someone gasped for air, eyes wide open. He looked up at the ceiling and wondered if he had fainted, and if so, why. He was shocked to find himself tied up on the floor. He was furious and wanted to know who had done this to him. Hu Bung was tied up with rope, looking shocked. Yo-woon grinned, admitting that he was the one who did it. Hu Bung was completely completely stunned and asked how this was even possible. Yo-woon explained that while Hubong was out cold, he tied him up and put him on the bed, and then wondered how he even passed out. Hubong thought that he was supposed to have extreme internal damage, but instead, he seemed perfectly fine. Hubong started freaking out, wondering what the voice was saying about him being bald. He looked in the mirror and screamed, realizing that he was bald. Hubong started crying, saying he couldn't feel the smooth texture of his hair anymore. He couldn't believe it, asking how he could be bald. Hubong was in complete shock, just thinking about his hair. Yo-woon told the bald man to shut up, but then he noticed something. The guy had fainted again. Hubong was still out cold. Yo-woon asked if he had calmed down now. Meanwhile, Hubong was still struggling against his restraints. Yo-woon wondered what the guy was even trying to say with a gag in his mouth. Yo-woon thought the guy was just naive when he first saw him at the entrance ceremony, but he couldn't believe this was what he was actually like. Yo-woon stared down at the bald guy and wondered who he really was. Hubong struggled against his restraints, asking how he thought he had survived this long. With that, Yo-woon smiled, mentioning the assassination attempts and the scumbags who had tried to poison him. At the same time, Yo-woon asked how many people Hubong thought there were. Yo-woon said he knew Hubong was just fooling around earlier, but did he know how much it would hurt if he got stabbed? He could even die. Yo-woon held the knife to the bald guy's throat, demanding he talk and tell him who made him do this. The guy struggled against the gag, unable to speak. Hubong screamed in pain. Yo-woon asked if he was all right and told him to talk. Yo-woon repeated his question, demanding to know what he was talking about. Hubong claimed he didn't know what Yo-woon was talking about. He pointed out that if he stabbed him in the infirmary, Yo-woon would be blamed. Hubong, tied up, reminded Yo-woon that students can't hurt others outside of training and duels at the demonic academy. Hubong figured that he wasn't going to tell him anything easily. He said that even if Yo-woon tortured him, he wouldn't open his mouth. Hubong laughed, wondering what Yo-woon thought he could do. He probably didn't expect Hubong to be this tough. Yo-woon smiled and said that they would just have to see if he opened his mouth or not, and then paused, wondering what to do. Hubong was then gagged, unable to speak. Yo-woon told him to wait right there. Hubong noticed that where Yo-woon used to live, there weren't many things, but there were so many things here. He wondered what Yo-woon was going to do with those needles. Yo-woon just smiled. Hubong was terrified. Yo-woon grabbed Hubong's hand tightly. Hubong was scared and noticed his hands were clenched. He couldn't believe someone with no martial arts training could be this strong. Hubong wondered why Yo-woon was trying to open his hand and what he was going to do. Yo-woon told him it was going to hurt a little, and then he stabbed the needle into Hubong's hand. Hubong screamed as loud as he could, but the gag in his mouth stopped the sound. Yo-woon told him to stop overreacting. Hubong kept kicking his feet, trying to get away. Hubong begged him to stop. He said he wouldn't talk even if he was tortured. Yo-woon told him to just think of it as revenge. The screams echoed through the building. Hubong was still trying to scream, but he couldn't. He was tied up and passed out. Yo-woon asked if it hurt a lot, mentioning that Hubong had fainted twice. Yo-woon wondered if they should do the other hand. Hubong could only scream again. Yo-woon asked if he finally felt like talking. He added that Hubong should have done that at the beginning. Hubong thought that this guy was crazy and that he would have died or gone crazy after enduring that. He decided he should just tell him now. It was Cheon-mu-goom, wasn't it? Hubong asked how Yo-woon knew. Yo-woon smiled, asking if he was curious as to how he knew, and confirmed that he was right. Hubong explained that thanks to Cheon-mu-goom's consideration, the instructor came every day to give him lessons. Yo-woon smiled, saying that he knew in great detail what group he was in and who else was in it, but he wanted to hear it from Hubong's own mouth. Hubong, looking terrified, said, "Cadet 23, Heo-bong." Hubong was sweating bullets, wondering who had said that this guy was nothing. Hubong thought that Yo-woon was a monster hiding his strength and acting like he didn't have any, and he couldn't even imagine how strong he would be once he got even stronger. Hubong said he got some good information, and he needed to sleep, so they should end it there, asking if Yo-woon really wanted to stop. Hubong promised he wouldn't tell anyone what had happened earlier. Hubong begged him to take his anger out on him. Yo-woon didn't say anything and just pointed his finger at the tied-up Hubong, and with a swift strike, Yo-woon knocked him out cold. Hubong was shocked, realizing that Yo-woon had used Jom-hyul, a technique that neutralizes an enemy by targeting a certain spot of battle marks in the body. He was sweating, thinking he was wrong about Yo-woon. He thought that Yo-woon didn't have any nagong. Yo-woon just stared down at him. Hubong was furious, calling him a bastard in his thoughts. He was fooling everyone. Under the moonlight, a figure ran across the rooftops. The guy moved so fast, he was practically a blur. Someone was watching all this, thinking the kid learned fast. It was the day before. One of them was helping the other focus his energy. The man couldn't believe what he was seeing. This kid, how was this even possible? In just 5 days, Yo-woon had managed to get Naegong. It normally takes at least 2 to 3 weeks, maybe even a month. He was way better than the man expected. This guy was the real deal. He had originally planned to help Yo-woon get Naegong in about 2 weeks, and then teach him basic techniques and breathing methods. He realized he'd have to change his plan. Suddenly, a voice called out, "Hello, teacher!" Yo-woon greeted Hubong, saying that his student, Cheon Yo-woon, sends a morning greeting to his teacher. Yo-woon asked where he had put it, saying that he had it under his bed, and told him to bring it there. It was the Black Dragon Ball, made by the Demonic Academy, with medicinal herbs. It's a medicinal ball given to students that pass the first test. If absorbed properly, it allows one to acquire years' worth of Naegong. However, after it's consumed, the body becomes resistant, so the effect is less effective on a second dose. Hubong held the box out, but mentioned that it still had a nasty smell. Hubong thought that if the kid took this, he should be able to get a maximum of 20 years of Naegong. Then he should be able to take care of himself. But then, Hubong realized something. He asked who the kid over there was. Hubong seemed surprised. Hubong was tied up and knocked out. Yo-woon looked down and asked if he had done something to his battle marks point. The guy was saying that someone came after him after Dr. Beck left. He was shocked to hear that the guy came after him. Turns out, since yesterday, which was the 5th day since they entered the academy, training was done with real swords. The injured guy figured he was stabbed on purpose to get close to the other guy. He couldn't believe the guy dared to do such a thing in the infirmary of the Demonic Academy. Didn't he know he could be kicked out if he was discovered? It seemed like the guy had the insides to not be afraid of it. Or, the protagonist realized, this could mean that someone ordered him to do this. Yo-woon figured that Hubong knew who was behind the attack and asked him to spill the beans. Hubong said it was a scumbag from the loyal clan who was in the same group as him. He added that he had never seen any good people from that clan. Hubong continued, saying that it was a tough family with a lot of troublemakers, but he couldn't say anything against them. Yo-woon said that it seemed like Hubong had a pretty tough life, but he was used to it. Hubong looked at Yo-woon, thinking that it was because he said it like that it made it sad. Yo-woon smacked Hubong to wake him up. Hubong explained that if someone used less than a year's worth of internal energy to poke his battle marks point, it would only last a couple of hours. Yo-woon said that it would take at least 10 years of internal energy to do it properly, and demanded if he understood. Hubong said that he would keep that in mind. The guy opened a small box. Yo-woon held the Black Dragon Ball, asking if he should just swallow it. Cheon Mukium told him no, he should chew it first to make sure the medicine works better. Yo-woon could already tell from the smell that it was going to taste awful. He ate it anyway, but the taste was so bitter that it paralyzed his tongue and made him want to throw up. Cheon Mukium told him that now that he had swallowed it, he should start using his breathing techniques. Cheon Mukium told him that his teacher would help him absorb the medicine well. Yo-woon replied that they should start, and asked Cheon Mukium to take care of him. Our hero started meditating. Cheon Mukium explained that a substance that helps energy activity had entered his body, and it was reacting to the energy inside him. He was then asked if he would accept the absorption by speeding up the cycle. Yo-woon didn't know what he was talking about, but figured he wanted to help, so he agreed. It would stimulate the metabolism of his body. Cheon Mukium was shocked, wondering how this could be happening. Cheon Mukium realized that the young master was born with the body of a war god, and it was absorbing all of the medicine and amplifying it. He should only be absorbing up to 80% of it. Cheon Mukium was relieved that he had been nervous for no reason. At the same time, the sun was setting on the buildings. Yo-woon didn't say anything. Seob Meng asked how the Naegong felt. Seob Meng smiled, saying that Yo-woon did well, and that he was pretty sweaty this time too. Seob Meng said that Yo-woon was able to get 1.5 times the amount of Naegong. Yo-woon was shocked, asking if that meant 30 years. Seob Meng said that was just a rough guess. He added that the other students would be absorbing the medicine on their own, so they might not even be able to absorb half of it. Yo-woon was speechless. Seob Meng was super thankful. He said it was all because of Yo-woon and wouldn't have been possible without him. He added that he was very lucky. Yo-woon smiled, saying that his luck must be Nano. He thanked Nano, and Nano replied that it was programmed to help him. Yo-woon looked at the sky and realized it was getting late. He figured he had to head back right away. Seob Meng called out to Yo-woon, asking what was wrong. The man asked his teacher if he could teach him his blade skill formation, starting tomorrow. The teacher agreed, saying of course he could. He warned that the student wouldn't have a lot of time, so he better be ready. The student replied that he would be. The scene showed a view of the city. Lee Hameng laughed, saying it was a very nice morning and that someone seemed to be in a good mood. The man smiled, saying that it was all thanks to Jahyun, and thanked the prince. He laughed, saying that the other guy must be struggling a lot since his limbs were broken. He laughed again, saying he'd been wanting the other guy to get on the floor and crawl like a bug, adding that it even made his skin itch. Lee Hameng just burst out laughing. He pointed at Hubong and asked where his hair had gone overnight. Still laughing, Hubong was mad, but he couldn't yell because of the guy next to him. Lee Hameng apologized, saying he laughed too much and was tearing up, but then said it was too late to cover for Hubong. Lee Hameng just stood there, looking down at the guy in the bed. Yo Woon was just lying there, thinking. The guy was thinking that something must have happened overnight. The man decided to not pay attention to it. He remembered that the Mado House doctor should only focus on treatment and not ask questions. 2 days later, at the Mado House's group 8 quarters, the man thought it was interesting. Shouldn't he have been kicked out of the group? The guy explained that he wanted to cut the 7th's tendons, but the doctor stayed by Cheon-yo Woon all night because of his bad wounds. The man couldn't believe it. He asked if the doctor didn't even sleep and if this was the excuse he was getting. The guy nervously explained to the prince that he moved at night like he was ordered, but the doctor woke up too. The prince's eyes narrowed with anger. The prince yelled, asking how bright a doctor's ear could be. The man got kicked right into the ground. The prince was furious and called the man a piece of trash for failing such a simple task. The man told the prince to wait a moment and asked what was wrong. The prince asked if the man knew the name of the doctor in the clinic. The man, lying on the ground, said that he heard the doctor's name was Baek Jong-myung. The prince repeated the doctor's name, Baek Jong-myung, asking if the man on the ground knew him. The bald man realized that the doctor was probably a student of Dr. Baek Jong-woo. He explained that Baek Jong-woo used to be part of the Poison Clan, but he focused on medicine and became the Lord's personal doctor. He was even ranked in the top 30 of the demonic cult. The bald man said that if their doctor was Baek Jong-woo's student, his martial arts skills might be amazing. The prince got angry, saying that sending the other man was a waste, and then kicked him. The man was crying, realizing he wouldn't get any support for his clan. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. The guy with long hair smirked, asking Haobong if he would do something for him. The smirking man told Haobong not to worry because he was the heir of the Spring Clan. The injured man on the ground told them to keep hitting him. He wanted to see if they could keep it up when that guy arrived. The man was still on the ground, defeated. The man demanded to know why the bald guy was wearing that bandana. The bald guy looked shocked. The man kept kicking him, asking if he thought shaving his head and pretending to feel sorry would make things okay. He was not happy. The other guys thought things had calmed down for a bit, but now the quarters were getting noisy again. One of the men said he felt like trash and told Jahyun they should leave. As they walked away, he cursed. Someone was really angry and shouted that Cheon Mukum and Cheon Yo Woon could all go die. Meanwhile, someone wondered if Dr. Beck could use martial arts too, but the doctor said he only knew medicine. Days later, at 6 a.m., the Mado House clinic was empty. Bare feet stepped onto the floor. The man stared at his hands, deep in thought. Someone stepped forward, putting all their strength into the move. The guy moved like a blur, his sword cutting through the air. The man watched him, thinking that the student was a genius. He thought that he had only shown the butterfly shadow step a few times and fixed his posture these past few days, but his movements were stable and natural. The man figured that if he kept training, he would have no problem operating formation. Lee Hameng told the student that next was movement. The student started moving his hands, trying to get a feel for it. Thanks to the nanomachine scanning Lee Hameng's posture, he could perfectly copy it, but that would make him suspicious, so he decided to go just a bit slower. The student practiced the movement, trying to make it his own. Lee Hameng explained that the grafting martial technique has 24 movements, and that 3 basic movements create 1 formation, making up to 8 formations. Lee Hameng thought that it took too much time to teach him the basics, so he couldn't teach him the connections. Lee Hameng figured that if he had 1 or 2 months more with him, the student would have been able to learn everything completely, but 1 week is too short. Lee Hameng told the student, "That's it. You memorized it well." The student replied that Lee Hameng was flattering him. The teacher handed him a piece of paper, asking what it was. Lee Hameng explained that it was the butterfly dance and Naegong operation technique. He wanted to teach it himself, but since it was the last day, he figured that the young master master would be able to learn the basics easily. Li Hemeng warned him that he'd check on him later, so he better not slack off and memorize it properly. The student thanked him, promising not to fail him. Li Hemeng simply replied that he shouldn't. Li Hemeng then picked up a stick and started practicing the moves. Li Hemeng presented his wild dance blade. He told the young master to try wielding it. Yo Woon grabbed it and said it felt surprisingly light. Yo Woon noticed that normal swords weighed around 2 to 3 guns, but this wild dance blade was only around 1.5. He wondered if it was because of the butterfly dance. Li Hemeng smiled, impressed by the young master's quick thinking. Yo Woon checked the blade and noticed how sharp it was. He thought Dr. Beck would be annoyed if he saw this. Li Hemeng smiled, explaining that even though the blade was light and had a narrow range, it was made with cold iron. The sharpness and durability gave the sword its title. Yo Woon told him to step back so he could show him what he wanted to see. Li Hemeng told him to watch closely, showing him his butterfly technique. And then Yo Woon activated his nanomachines. The nanomachines got ready to Li Hemeng's technique, as requested by Yo Woon. The sun rose over the demonic cult, painting the sky with light. Yo Woon ran across the rooftops. One of the figures on the roof said that the right guardian was finally leaving, and that the other did well pretending not to know. Li Hemeng asked how he could go against his orders. He was happy he didn't have to watch him coming in and out of his mouse hole. The man suggested that they should reassign guards to the second floor hall, since they would have had plenty of rest. Li Hemeng said he was leaving, but Li Hemeng asked what was the reason for his concern for the 7th prince. The other man said it was because that was fair. Li Hemeng chuckled, asking if he was saying that the 7th prince had a chance because he was of royal battle marks. The man replied that he shouldn't question the sky. The man figured that, as expected of the Wind King, you never knew where he went. If he decided to run away, it'd be impossible to catch him. Anyway, Li Hemeng wondered if 10 days would really make everything fair. The man looked at something with a puzzled expression. The man noticed that Yo Woon was still sleeping, even though he was always up when he came for work, and wondered what was up. The man thought this was the last time Yo Woon could rest peacefully like this. Once he was released, he'd go through a lot. Yo Woon was told to sleep a little more. The nanomachines then started to work on his muscles to simulate the butterfly technique's starting expression with 80% completion to data goal, and changed to veins with 75% completion. The nanomachine said there was 1 hour left until 100% completion. An hour later, the guy was still sleeping at the table. Suddenly, the guy woke up and started throwing up everywhere. He was confused, asking what was happening. Yo Woon kept on vomiting. The man asked why he was suddenly vomiting and shivering so much, wondering if he was okay. The man told Yo Woon to just let it all out. The man told Yo Woon to lie down and rest, since it looked like he had calmed down a bit. His body was still shaking. The man was confused, wondering how someone who had been lying down the whole time could have a pulse like that. His pulse was running as if the body was completely overworked, but the body's response to the body evolution had stabilized. Yo Woon was still breathing heavily. The man was confused. He couldn't believe how stable Yo Woon had suddenly become. The man admitted he'd never heard of something like this from his teacher. The man shrugged it off, deciding to just leave Yo Woon to sleep. It was almost lunchtime, so he figured he'd just go eat. But Yo Woon's eyes snapped open. Someone sat on the floor, meditating. The man opened his hand, ready to start training. Yo Woon clenched his fist, feeling the power. He could feel the strength in his hands, so different from just 6 hours ago. He figured he now knew how much training the teacher went through. If Li Hemeng somehow found out that he had earned this body in just 6 hours, he'd be scared, right? Yo Woon was really thinking about how scared Li Hemeng would be. The young master focused his energy. Yo Woon unleashed all that power, sending waves of blue energy blasting outwards. Yo Woon unleashed all that power, sending waves of blue energy blasting outwards. The student was shocked by the show of power. He thought it was amazing that he could create that much pressure without even using Nagong. Yo Woon asked the nanomachines if they had scanned everything, and they confirmed that they had. Li Hemeng turned to the student and asked if he watched properly. The student confirmed that he did. Li Hemeng said it was a shame, and that he should have taught him formations properly. But today was the end. Li Hemeng told him that if it was him, he'd be able to learn the butterfly dance just by watching. He thanked him for everything and told him to keep at it. Yo Woon replied to the teacher, saying that it'll be very hard once he returns to the motto house. Li Hemeng told the student not to lose. Yo Woon realized that there was at least one person who cared about him. He decided he should live up to his expectations. Yo Woon asked the nanomachines If they were done analyzing the scanned move, and they confirmed it was completed, the nanomachines told him that to use the move, his muscles and veins needed to change a lot, and it would take about 6 hours. Yo-woon was shocked and asked why it would take so long. He started practicing the move, trying to get it right. He put more power into the move, trying to speed up the process. Yo-woon kept practicing, putting his whole body into it. He was happy because he only used the first formation, and it was the same as his teachers. Yo-woon prepared to move on to the second formation. Suddenly, he stopped. He could hear someone walking in the hallway. Yo-woon wondered if he had always been this sensitive. Had his senses become sharper as his body changed? He realized that all preparations were now complete, which was great. Yo-woon turned around to see a man standing behind him. Yo-woon told the man he was ready to be discharged, asking if he knew what was complete and when he had woken up. He realized the presence he had felt in the hallway was Dr. Beck. Yo-woon placed his hand over the emblem on his chest. Dr. Beck sighed, saying he didn't even have any other patients, and wondered what he was going to do when Yo-woon left. Yo-woon said there would be more patients soon, but then thought to himself that it was better if there weren't any. Dr. Beck thanked him for his time, saying he'd be praying for him. Then the door shut. Now Dr. Beck didn't have anything to do, so he wondered if he should just sleep. Meanwhile, Yo-woon stood at the door, ready to leave. Yo-woon thought that if the doctor didn't pretend not to know that the right guardian taught him martial arts, it would have been uncomfortable the whole time he was in the clinic. Yo-woon promised to never forget the doctor's kindness. He added that he would definitely send all the patients the doctor wanted. The doctor's students got goosebumps, wondering what was going on. It was afternoon at the Meadow House, and group training was about to start. Suddenly, some of the guys noticed someone. They realized it was another clan heir in their group, and it had been 2 weeks since they last saw him. The guy smirked, saying that the wait was finally over. Yo-woon walked forward, and someone called him a peasant. Turning around, Yo-woon was greeted by someone who asked if he was okay now, calling him leader. Yo-woon smirked, saying that he was completely cured, which was fortunate. The guy speaking reminded him that he had explained it in theory, but asked if he remembered his position, which Yo-woon confirmed. He told him to go that way with these weapons. The 2 guys started walking, carrying the shield and spear with them. The guy asked if he had only come now because he was scared. Cheon Mugum insulted the other guy, calling him dirty. Cheon Mugum was furious. Cheon Mugum yelled, asking how that scumbag could ignore him. Yo-woon smirked, telling Cheon Mugum not to get too excited yet. Yo-woon thought that he would show him what's what soon enough. The instructor announced that they would start practical training with real swords, so everyone needed to pay attention to their spacing. He warned them that if the same accident happened again, he would kick them out of the academy. The instructor yelled, asking if they understood. A red flag was raised, and right after that, the students started moving. Turns out, even though Cheon Mugum's personality is pretty bad, he controls his teammates well, like a clan leader should. The problem, though, is Cheon Yo-woon. He'd put him in the position with the least movement on purpose, hoping he wouldn't screw things up. But then, he was surprised because the boy was actually doing better than he thought. He wondered if he could keep up with the others, and if he was quick-witted. The order came to line up their shields properly, and keep their posture and lineups straight. They were doing well, but they couldn't move until they got the command. Minutes later, someone messed up, and the instructor yelled at them for moving when they weren't supposed to. He kept shouting, asking if they thought they could beat the other groups in the second test, if they couldn't even do this right. He told them to pay attention. The man wondered how the guys who had been training this whole time could be so bad. He noticed that Cheon Yo-woon was perfectly fine and hadn't moved at all. He wondered if he was really the same guy who had been lying down in the clinic the whole time. The man decided he needed to reassess Cheon Yo-woon and ordered them to change formation. The instructor kept yelling at them to surround the enemy in a semicircle. He then ordered them to move forward half a step, praising them as they took big steps. One of the students followed the instructions, focused on the task. The instructor got angry, wondering why Cheon Yo-woon wasn't making any mistakes. He thought that there was no way he would just watch the peasant succeed. Ja-hyun was among the soldiers. The soldier told them to just nod if they could hear him. The instructor told the third lineup to do as he said. One of the soldiers replied that he understood. The instructor immediately ordered them to change the lineup. The instructor ordered the soldiers to quickly stack the shields 3 levels high. Yo-woon thought it shouldn't be too hard, especially since the nano had already imported the simulation video for them. He then told them that once the shields were stacked, they should stick their swords out through the holes. Yo-woon stressed that they needed to keep their speed up, even if they were being careful. One of the instructors complained that he could see someone's behind completely and wondered what was going on. The bald man stood over Yo-woon, declaring that peasant battle marks should stain the ground. At the same time, the other soldiers continued stacking their shields. Meanwhile, Yo-woon's eyes narrowed. The bald man realized that Yo-woon had noticed his attack. The bald man figured he was just going to use a little bit of inner power, since Yo-woon didn't know martial arts. But he decided to use all his power. Yo-woon blocked the sword with his shield. Because of the force, Yo-woon was sent flying high into the air from the shield wall. Yo-woon was shocked that he had been rebounded. Hubong was lying on the ground. Hubong was confused and wondered if he had been catapulted off because the other guy's inner power was much stronger than his. Hubong looked up, still trying to understand what just happened. Yo-woon saw that it was the same guy from before and asked what he was doing back here. Hubong, who was still on the ground, yelled out, calling him leader, and immediately a foot landed on Hubong's face. Hubong was still feeling the pain in his ankle. The men with shields were sweating, knowing they were in trouble. Yo-woon was smiling like a boss. The guy looked angry, asking how a peasant dared to laugh at him. Yo-woon saw Hubong grinding his teeth and asked if he couldn't come to his senses. Hubong tried to say something about his butt. Yo-woon looked furious, saying that this kid was completely gone, and then punched him hard. Yo-woon asked if he was also the one who stabbed number 23 in the back last time. Yo-woon told him that he wouldn't be having any free time for the next 4 days, and that until bedtime, he would be receiving hell's training with his leader. The guy looked angry, saying that this piece of trash was still making excuses. The guys were saying that he deserved it, acting all high and mighty, with Cheon Mugun backing him. Someone was clenching their teeth in anger. The guy looked furious. Someone shouted the name Cheon Yo-woon. The guy told him that he wouldn't have any free time for the next 4 days, and he would be receiving hell's training with their leader. The guy yelled, saying that the trash was still making excuses. Someone noticed that Cheon Yo-woon's power was stronger than he thought. He wondered if the right guardian taught him, but it was still weird. Lee Hameng thought that the bald guy should have around 30 years of training worth of power since he took the medicine ball, so he wondered if Cheon Yo-woon's power exceeded that. Cheon Mukeum thought there was no way that the drunkard Xiao Bemeng taught him properly. The guy wondered if Cheon Yo-woon had a body that could naturally take in the full power of the medicine ball. Lee Hameng thought that was the only way to explain it. He figured that even if he was a half battle marks, he was still the son of a tiger. Someone noticed the standoff between 2 possible heirs in the same group and thought things were about to get interesting. The scene changed to the Grand Armament Great Hall. Everyone started eating at Motto. The food looked really good. Our hero thought the chicken marinated in soy sauce was delicious. He was happy to finally be eating something other than white porridge after 2 weeks. Anyway, he wondered if Cheon Mu-gyum was going to keep glaring at him during the entire meal. He decided to just enjoy the food for now. Yo-woon said he didn't know why they hated him so much, but he couldn't forgive the 6th clan's actions either. He added that they wouldn't know what it felt like to watch their mother die without being able to do anything. He would trample over all of them from now on. At that moment, an announcement rang out, declaring that mealtime was over and Friday's schedules were wrapped up. Everyone except number 80 was dismissed. The man shouted for everyone to leave. Then he told number 80 to come with him. Yo-woon smirked, already planning his next move. He started walking towards the building where the trainees were staying. As he walked, he thought that Group 8's quarters were in room 8 on the 1st floor, which was easy to remember. Suddenly, someone shouted at him, asking where he thought he was going without permission. It was Baki, leaning against the wall with a confident smirk. Baki watched Yo-woon walk by and thought that the guy didn't disappoint his expectations. Another guy wondered if he wanted to act like a master wherever he went. The crowd whispered that it was the Spring Clan's heir and asked who the guy in front of him was, before answering that it was the 7th heir from all the rumors, and that this should be fun. A woman wondered if it was Cheon Mu-gum and Cheon Yo-woon. Someone else noted that many had gathered, and asked if they should start. Cheon Yo-woon walked forward, passing by a group of people. One of the guys spat out that he had peasant battle marks. Yo-woon asked if it was easy to just lie on a bed in the clinic. quick. The other guy asked if he was annoyed and if that peasant battle marks was insulting the Lord. The man looked surprised and asked what he meant. The man asked if calling him peasant battle marks was insulting the Lord, but he didn't understand what was going on. Yo Woon asked if his status was so high that he could insult the Lord, who was like a god to them. The man looked around at the crowd and stammered, asking when he had ever done that. The man was furious that he was supposed to crush Yo Woon, but instead, he was the one receiving that treatment. The woman smirked, thinking that the Spring Clan were really stupid. The man watched the scene unfold. Cheon Kyung Woon thought the guy was making a big deal out of nothing and called him a dull scumbag. Suddenly, someone got punched hard. The guy was furious and said that he was going to crush that arrogant mouth, and then he got punched again. Yo Woon was ready to beat someone else up. Yo Woon asked what the guy was trying to say about crushing Kwek. The guy coughed up battle marks. The guy was furious that a peasant dared to do that. Then a blast of energy came out of nowhere. Yo Woon used Spring Clan's fist technique. The guy swung his sword, but Yo Woon kicked him off the ground, and the guy shouted that Yo Woon was a bastard. Yo Woon jumped away, and someone shouted, asking if he was running. The guy was surprised and asked how Yo Woon could be weightless, calling him a peasant bastard. The other guy started yelling at their teammate to get that trash. Yo Woon didn't wait around. He just ran. The guy was pissed that Yo Woon punched him and ran away. He thought that if he let him go, he wouldn't be considered a man. He chased after him through the forest. The others were surprised at how fast Yo Woon was. The guy chasing Yo Woon realized something was weird. It was like he was running just fast enough for them not to catch up. The man started yelling at the others for hesitating and called them slow. He said he'd go by himself. The guy yelled that he'd catch Cheon Yo Woon, crush his face, and destroy all the bones in his body. Yo Woon kept running through the forest, moving fast. Our hero suddenly stopped and crouched down, ready to fight. The guy yelled, calling Yo Woon a fucktard and asking if he was done running. Yo Woon smirked and asked if he was talking about running. The man stepped forward, saying it was a joke, but then he looked shocked. At the same time, Yo Woon grinned, thinking there was no reason to show the others yet. Yo Woon attacked the man with a crazy amount of power. The man was shocked by the crazy power. Yo Woon didn't stop there. He kept attacking with everything he had. The man struggled to block, saying that even though he used the 7-star defensive skill, he was still getting pushed back. He realized that the young master's defensive skills were strong. He looked at Yo Woon suspiciously. Yo Woon smiled and asked how he knew martial arts. The man thought about it and realized that Yo Woon's movements were fast. He remembered that the young master had no inner power in the first test and wondered what was happening. Yo Woon smirked, happy that the man was getting nervous, just as he expected. The man kept up his attacks with everything he had. Suddenly, one of the man's teammates shouted a warning about their prince. Yo Woon used the butterfly dance's second formation, with light butterfly circular movements. The young master's eyes widened in shock as he tried to understand what was happening. The man couldn't believe it, he shouted out, wondering how Yo Woon avoided his attack. Turns out, Yo Woon was already preparing his next move. Yo Woon struck with immense power. Because of that, the man's face contorted in pain. The man didn't give up and used the Spring Clan's fist technique's second formation to launch a continuous batting fist attack. The unnamed man's eyes were full of anger. At the same time, he kept attacking with his fist. The man kept hitting him with everything he had, trying to take down the young master. The attacks were so strong that Yo Woon was sent flying back. The man was still unable to match Yo Woon's skills. He thought that Yo Woon's power must have been higher than the other students even before he joined. He figured that Yo Woon's power must be even higher since he took the magic ball, but he was still determined to stand his ground. The unnamed man knew that he needed to attack without giving the young master time to react. He moved so fast that the air around him blurred. The man was shocked to see an afterimage. He couldn't believe the young master could use that kind of martial arts. Yo Woon moved with incredible speed. The young master attacked with a spinning strike, pushing the unnamed man back. The unnamed man was shocked by the young master's speed and power. Yo Woon didn't give him a chance to recover. The force of the blow sent the man flying. Yo Woon stood over the fallen man, who was coughing up battle marks. He realized that the young master was good with formations, but he had no idea how to respond to the enemy's attacks. The guy was down, realizing he had been so focused on the punches that he didn't see the kick coming. He was surprised that the young master used skills that didn't suit him, but he could tell that he was just making it up as he went. Cheon Mukium smirked, saying that it was exactly as he expected. He was just trying to copy others without knowing his own limits. The man wondered if Cheon Mukium, realized that he had only learned this technique with 2 formations, and that he didn't have enough actual experience. He realized that he had underestimated Cheon Mukium. Who knew experience would make such a big difference? The man balled his fist, admitting he didn't know how the young master had learned martial arts. He used the Spring Clan's fist technique, 5th formation, instant attack, Spring's roar, but he said he would ask questions later. The young master wondered what to do and what formation he needed to use. Suddenly, his system detected danger from an external force. The system started increasing eye functions in response to the danger, operating defense mode through battle tutorial. So, the system showed him exactly where to hit. The young master punched with everything he had, and immediately, the guy's face exploded from the force. Yeo Woon kept attacking, not giving the man a chance to breathe. The man's face was getting destroyed. The protagonist didn't stop, keeping the pressure on. The man couldn't believe it. He asked how this could not be a technique. Yeo Woon looked just as confused. He wondered what was happening. The system then explained that it was using the optional built-in self-defense martial arts, battle tutorial type defense style, boxing. The system continued, saying this indicated independent teaching and that they had created results through analysis of the opponent's movements for every 0.01 seconds. Yeo Woon didn't know what that meant, but he asked if it was saying this was boxing. He then asked if it was possible to use the butterfly dance instead of boxing. The system asked if he would accept, and Yeo Woon agreed immediately. The man was furious, accusing Yeo Woon of learning fist techniques and hiding a card up his sleeve. But the man declared that it wouldn't work anymore and charged forward. The system announced it was changing the defense mode from boxing to butterfly dance. Yeo Woon realized he could now see where the man would attack. Yeo Woon was just too fast for him, dodging every attack. The man was furious. He couldn't believe the young master had avoided all his attacks. He screamed, "This scumbag! He avoided all of my hits," but Yeo Woon didn't care. He launched a savage counterattack. The man was getting pummeled, battle marks splattering everywhere. Now he was crying, tears streaming down his face as he realized he was completely outmatched. The man, covered in battle marks, told Guum to do his best. He continued, saying that if he did well, his father would leave that trash and come back to her. The woman put her hand on the child's head, telling him that he needed to win everything. The child looked up at his mother and said, "Yes, mother." She yelled that it was because he couldn't do it right. The woman cried, saying it was all because he was bad at everything and because that dirty woman showed up. She kept crying, saying it wasn't her fault and that he couldn't do anything right. The woman cried even harder as she was choked, saying it was all because he was a mistake. He remembered that memory and was not happy about it. Yeo Woon looked to the side, wondering if he had. The man was bleeding and could not believe it, asking if he could actually lose. He tried to stand his ground. The man shouted that he would never lose to a peasant bastard like Yeo Woon. Yeo Woon didn't care and punched him in the face. Our hero hit him again with a devastating blow. The man coughed up battle marks, completely defeated. The leaves fell from the trees in the forest. Yeo Woon stood over the fallen man, looking down at him. The man said he couldn't believe he was losing to a peasant bastard like Yeo Woon. The man was lying on the ground, unable to believe what had happened. The man on the ground heard Yeo Woon tell him that he brought all of this on himself. The guys watching couldn't believe that Yeo Woon beat Cheon Mugun, someone they couldn't even take down together. They whispered to each other, saying that Yeo Woon had no inner power just 10 days ago and wondered what they should do. Yeo Woon turned around and asked if they wanted to try him too, and then ordered them to take the defeated guy away. The defeated man was being dragged away as he asked if the prince was alright, saying that they would help him. He thought to himself that if he had more authority, everyone would obey him like that. He yelled at them to let go of him, saying he would walk by himself, but they kept calling him Prince. The guy that Yeo Woon defeated was still on the ground, complaining that Yeo Woon didn't finish him off properly. He went on, saying that if the second test wasn't a group task, he would have cracked Yeo Woon's head open, calling him a peasant. Yeo Woon warned that he would really do it if he kept coming at him like that. The other guy yelled back, telling him to do it, even though he couldn't even get up by himself. The guy kept yelling insults as he was being carried away, but said he was leaving. He was still mad about what happened. The night was dark and the forest was quiet, but strange symbols floated in the air. Yeo Woon realized that last fight was dangerous and that he would have lost if it wasn't for the nanomachine. Even though he learned martial arts faster than anyone, he couldn't just ignore experience. He knew he couldn't become like his teacher just because he had mastered the butterfly dance. Yo-woon knew that if he wanted to reach a higher status, he needed internal energy and experience, but the 6th clan wouldn't leave him alone while he was trying to build on it. The protagonist decided that he needed to learn exactly how to use what he could right now. The nanomachine responded to Yo-woon's thoughts, confirming that it was checking the user's records. The nanomachine announced that he had only used 3% of all of its functions, which made Yo-woon wonder what that meant. The nanomachine corrected itself, stating that he had used 3/100ths of its functions, and that he hadn't exceeded 3/10ths of the nanomachine's functions, according to the records. Yo-woon realized that there must be more functions that he could make use of. Yo-woon asked Nano to tell him in detail about all the functions it could perform, and he accepted the transfer of the 7th generation nanomachine's function manual to his brain. The nanomachine asked if Yo-woon would like to add the English language to help him understand the manual, mentioning that it was the weird language he sometimes spoke in. Yo-woon agreed. The nanomachine confirmed that it would transfer the 7th generation nanomachine's manual, along with the English language, to his brain. The information flooded into Yo-woon's brain. The information transfer finished. Yo-woon felt a little dizzy from all the new knowledge, but at least he didn't feel like throwing up. Now that he had the manual, Yo-woon immediately started searching for new functions. Yo-woon was staring at the interfaces floating in front of him, totally shocked. He couldn't believe it. He wondered if he could really do all of this stuff. Then he saw something about repetitive battles in augmented reality. If he could do that, he could get all the practice he needed. Yo-woon wondered if he could run a simulation with Cheon-mu-geum. Turns out there wasn't enough information to make a perfect copy, but the nanomachine could make a simulation based on their last fight. Yo-woon decided to try it out right away. Yo-woon reached out and touched the ground. He wondered if this place would be good enough. Turns out nobody was around. The simulation avatar started to activate right in front of him. Yo-woon was amazed. Yo-woon realized that this was an avatar in augmented reality. The system asked if only he could see the avatar, and then said that the simulation settings were being changed, and that he needed to set the avatar's impact percentage on the user. The system then explained that the impact percentage was the amount of impact he would receive from the avatar's attacks. It told him to set it to 100 for the same amount of impact as normal, or lower if he wanted less. Yo-woon wondered how much it would hurt anyway, and then decided to set the impact to 100%. The system then said that the simulation would be started with 100% impact. The avatar immediately trash-talked him, calling him peasant battle marks and telling him to come at him. Yo-woon wondered why this stupidity was part of the simulation, as the avatar taunted him, asking if he was scared. Yo-woon was thrilled that he couldn't crack the avatar's head open earlier because of the test, but it didn't matter anymore since it was just an avatar. The avatar then taunted him, saying that it would come to him if he didn't come to it. The screen showed the Spring Clan fist techniques, Spring's roar formation. Yo-woon was shocked to see that the simulation was exactly the same as the real thing. Yo-woon didn't waste any time and immediately attacked with the Spring's roar formation. The avatar's face was being scanned and analyzed. The avatar mocked Yo-woon, asking if he really thought that kind of sloppy attack would work on him. But Yo-woon didn't listen and kept attacking with the Spring's roar formation. The avatar was suddenly shocked, wondering why he could feel pain. The nanomachine had given him the same amount of pain that he felt earlier, using the information that was collected. The avatar asked if he wanted to change the impact percentage, but said it was fine and they would continue like this. The avatar taunted Yo-woon, telling him to come at him. Yo-woon was getting annoyed. The avatar was about to strike, and Yo-woon shouted his name. It was now nighttime. Yo-woon was lying on the ground, breathing heavily. He asked the nanomachine what time it was. Yo-woon was pissed because he had to fight that avatar 15 times before he finally won. The first fight ended in only 5 formations, and he couldn't even defend himself properly, so he just used his body. Yo-woon realized that if he fought with Cheon-mu-geum properly, he wouldn't even get close and would just lose right away. The nanomachine told him that his skills would increase with experience and training, and the nanomachine added that the frequency of him using formations of the butterfly dance was increasing. Yo-woon was pissed that he lost to a guy who was just using the same 3 formations and basic moves over and over. He grinned, saying that Cheon-mu-geum's avatar would be nothing to him in 7 days. He was sure that the next time, he would completely destroy that avatar. The scene changed to the Mado House student quarters. Yo-woon was standing in the room, wondering which bed was his. The students were shocked and whispered to each other as Yo-woon entered the room. Yo-woon thought to himself that he just beat a clan heir, and now they were clearing the path for him. Suddenly, one of the students called him Prince. The guy told him that his bed was this way, and Yo-woon was surprised. The other students wondered why he was acting like that. The guy asked Yo-woon why he was acting so different. The man said he had already been abandoned by Cheon-mu-gum, so he had nothing left to lose. He figured he was probably gonna die anyway. He figured he might as well take a gamble. The man, Cadet Hyo-bong, declared that he wished to serve Prince Cheon Yo-woon as his master. Hyo-bong was basically shouting, asking if he was really offering loyalty to the 7th prince, who didn't have any power. Yo-woon looked at him, asking if he really wanted to serve him as his master. Hyo-bong said he still felt bad about what happened before. He begged Yo-woon to take him in as a servant and let him serve him as much as he could. Yo-woon thought to himself that this guy wanted to be his servant, even though he's always had a hard time trusting others. Hyo-bong kept begging. Yo-woon was thinking that someone actually wanted to become his servant, even without being forced to become his guard by the Lord's orders. The protagonist smiled faintly, looking at Hyo-bong. Hyo-bong was super grateful and said he would do his absolute best. Suddenly, someone interrupted, saying he had only left for a little while, and this stupid thing was already happening. The guy yelled at Hyo-bong, asking who he was showing his loyalty to. Hyo-bong was thinking that Cheon-mu-gum and Ja-hyun were scary, but he couldn't show his fear. Hyo-bong yelled, asking who the guy was to call someone else's servant an insect. Yo-woon said that the guy was the insect for kissing up to someone's butt. Hyo-bong stammered, asking what Yo-woon had just said. Yo-woon smirked, asking why he was stuttering. The guy was furious, asking if they were scared and calling them names. He charged forward, calling them a peasant scumbag. But Yo-woon didn't even flinch. He blasted the guy with a powerful strike. The force sent him flying backwards, while everyone else watched in shock. Yo-woon smirked, thinking that the guy was nothing compared to the avatar he had fought. The guy on the ground was gasping for air. Hyo-bong was thinking that he had made the right choice. Yo-woon turned to him and asked if he wanted another go. Cheon-mu-gum scoffed, telling him to enjoy it while he could, because nothing had changed just because he had a servant. The crowd couldn't believe it. Cheon-mu-gum actually walked away from the fight. The crowd whispered, not sure if they should be happy or not, but they knew that the Spring Clan's authority wasn't going anywhere. But maybe, just maybe, Yo-woon stood there, looking like he was ready to face whatever came next. He'd bring a new change to the demonic academy. A week later, it was time for the group type second test, the Mado House Grand Armament. The instructor shouted that he had taught them everything they needed to know, and now they were responsible for how they performed. The instructor yelled, wanting to make sure everyone understood what motto meant. He explained that before they started, they would draw lots to decide who would fight who. Groups 1 to 4, 5 to 8, and 9 to 12 would draw lots among themselves. Lee Ha-meng ordered the group leaders from groups 1 to 4 to come forward. Someone noticed that the group leaders for groups 2 and 3 had changed. Turns out, Cheon-mu-yeon from the Dark Clan was still the group leader for group 1. Someone pointed out that Cadet 72 had been in group 4 before, right? They were still unsure though. Lee Ha-meng smirked, wondering if there were just 2 people. Then, someone reached into the box to draw the lots. Down below, the group leaders watched the process. The results were in. Match 1 would be Group 1 versus Group 3, and Match 2 would be Group 2 versus Group 4. The crowd cheered for their group leader. Lee Ha-meng called out for the leaders of Groups 5 through 8 to come forward. The crowd was shocked. Turns out, 2 people had changed this time as well, and they were wondering if Group 8 was for real. Lee Ha-meng just smirked at the situation. Yo-woon started walking forward. The crowd noticed him and were surprised. Cheon-mu-gum was furious, saying he had warned him so many times, calling Cheon-mu-gum an idiot. Turns out, this was after the end of training last afternoon. At the same time, Cheon-mu-gum was watching them. Noticing they were still doing group training, he thought they were idiots and realized they were just showing off their strategies, which was pitiful. Because of that, Cheon-mu-gum decided there was nothing more to watch and that he would go do some martial arts training. He was really mad at Cheon-mu-gum. A woman with red hair smiled. Suddenly, a man with brown hair looked surprised, wondering who it was. The woman walked away, ignoring him completely. The woman stopped and turned around to face him. The man looked angry and demanded to know what she was doing. The woman with red hair demanded to know why he was ignoring her after she called for him, asking what he wanted her to say. The woman looked annoyed and said she had called him after thinking about it a lot, and he was treating her like that. The woman turned away, telling him not to talk to her because he said the Spring Clan guys were idiots. The woman said he was annoying and that the Spring Clan guys were narrow-minded too. She told him to listen well because she was going to say it quickly. Suddenly, the man grabbed her arm, stopping her from leaving. The girl asked if he had hurt himself. She then pointed to her bandaged hands, clarifying that the injury was from yesterday. She repeated the word, yesterday? The girl explained that someone ambushed her while she was training alone last night. The girl with the bandaged hands started to explain that when she was training by herself last night, someone ambushed her. The man seemed surprised and asked which brave scumbag would do that. The girl said that she couldn't tell who it was because they were wearing a mask. The man asked if she wasn't attacked because she was being careless, mask or not. The girl got angry and told him not to make light of her words. She said she was never careless around that masked scumbag. The red-haired woman told the man to be careful since she got hurt. She added that there was a good chance they would go after him next. The man looked confused and asked what that had to do with them being in the same competition group. The red-haired woman reminded him that they would be split into groups of 4, and then they would draw lots to decide who they would fight. The man asked what that had to do with anything. The red-haired woman asked why they would split them into groups of 4 when they could just have everyone fight each other. The man looked even more confused and said he didn't understand what she was trying to say. The red-haired woman was getting frustrated, explaining that the teams knew exactly who they would be fighting. The man realized that they announced it in advance on purpose. The red-haired woman confirmed that they wanted the team leaders targeted because if the leader was gone, it would mess up the team's formation. The red-haired woman told him to watch out since the test was tomorrow and warned him not to go off to train by himself. She didn't want to hear any embarrassing news about a clan heir getting kicked out without even passing the second test. Yo-woon kept practicing his martial arts. He thought that the weakest of them all was warning him and that she was overstepping her boundaries. It still wasn't something he should just overlook though. It made him feel like trash, so he wondered if he should at least take Ja-hyun along. Meanwhile, the sun started to go down, painting the mountains in shadows. Someone told the master that it had become late in the evening. Yo-woon asked Nano what percentage of matches he'd won against Cheon-mu-geum's avatar. It was around 60%. He said he still had a lot to go, and that he'd said he'd be able to beat it easily within a week, but he'd only beaten him 60% of the time. Nano told him that his practical ability and the proficiency of his formations had become a lot higher after 106 training sessions. It estimated that he would be able to achieve his wish in the next few days. Yo-woon asked if it was consoling him. Nano replied that it was an estimation from the analysis, which Yo-woon thought was stiff. He said he should start making his way back to the quarters. Yo-woon looked around, seemingly confused. He started to walk. Suddenly, Yo-woon heard the sound of fighting nearby. Someone screamed in pain. He immediately ran towards the location. Someone wondered who was fighting because it was too dark to see. It looked like someone was on the ground too. Nano activated night vision mode, so Yo-woon could see what was happening. The night vision kicked in, and Yo-woon saw Cheon-mu-geum lying on the ground, and he realized that Cheon-mu-geum had been attacked by someone wearing a mask. Cheon-mu-geum was seriously injured, clutching his chest in pain. The masked man didn't give him a chance to recover, unleashing another attack. The masked man's power was overwhelming, sending Cheon-mu-geum flying. Yo-woon realized that the masked guy's moves were not to be taken lightly. He wondered who it could be. He was getting angry. The masked man was kicking with incredible force. Yo-woon screamed as he felt the power. The masked man was ready to attack again. The masked man kept attacking, not giving Yo-woon a chance to recover. Someone thought to himself that he didn't want to help Cheon-mu-geum, but he couldn't let the team leader get hurt right before the test. Suddenly, someone screamed at the top of their lungs for them to stop. The guy with the sword jumped in to attack the masked man, but the masked man was able to block the attack with ease. The masked man jumped, kicking out with incredible force. The masked man realized that he had increased the distance between them right before the attack hit, and he knew he was dealing with an expert. The masked man's eyes narrowed as he stared intently. The masked man stood tall, while Yo-woon fell to the ground, defeated. The masked man looked up at the moon, deciding he should give up chasing after him. The man cursed, realizing he had been defeated. He asked if the other man was okay. The man angrily refused to accept help from someone like him, saying he'd rather be left behind. The scene shifted to the Mado house quarters. The men inside looked shocked. They saw a man carrying another man, and they exclaimed in surprise, recognizing the prince. The men were worried and asked what happened and if the prince was all right, but the prince told them to treat the injured men first. Another man asked if the master was hurt, but Cheon-mu-geum said he was fine and not to worry. The nanomachine scanned Cheon-mu-geum's injury, identifying a 4-centimeter stab wound that was only 2 millimeters deep. Cheon-yo-woon realized that the injury wasn't that bad. One of the men noticed that Cheon-mu-geum was bleeding. As a result, Cheon-yo-woon looked furious, knowing who was responsible for the prince's injury. The man was bleeding and pale, barely able to speak. Hu Bong yelled for someone to call the leader right away. Someone quickly started to bandage the wound. The men asked the leader how he was doing, explaining that they had done what they could with the available supplies. Cheon Mukiam looked at the injured man with concern, wondering what was wrong. The injured man was told that he wouldn't be able to walk normally for a while. The injured man was in a lot of pain. The other men started to panic, realizing they were screwed now that their leader couldn't walk. Suddenly, blue energy shot into the injured man's head, starting to heal him. Someone told the injured man to sleep for a bit, promising to take him to the infirmary, and that there was one more injured person that needed help. One of the guys offered to carry the injured man, but Yo Woon said he would go himself. Someone shouted for the leader. Another guy ran up, carrying someone else who was hurt, saying that Cadet 80 had also hurt his head, though not as bad as Cadet 4. The leader said he knew, and that he figured someone would bring the injured guy over somehow. Someone replied, saying so he wasn't dumb, and that he left the guy so someone would follow him. The leader asked what the reason was, explaining that it wasn't much, but that only their team had the vibe that this setback would make them fail the test, and that it was a surprise to see that this one was hurt. The guy carrying the injured man said that was all he wanted to say, and demanded they give him the injured man. The man told him he should go back now, because he already knew he couldn't walk around at night. He understood. He told him that if he didn't have teeth, he needed to learn to use his gums. The man looked confused, wondering what the heck he just said. The guy turned around and walked away, leaving leaves falling behind him. The voice wondered if something like this had happened to other teams too. The voice thought it was just a loophole in the testing method, but now he realized there was a hidden purpose behind the second test. Yo Woon looked serious as he considered the implications. The ants surrounded the injured ant. The voice said that aiming for the team leader meant they were trying to make it easier to beat that team in the test tomorrow. Yo Woon suddenly realized something. He understood that the reason they were split into groups that would fight each other was all part of the plan. Lee Hameng grinned, knowing they made this situation happen on purpose. Yo Woon realized that this was the heavenly demon god sect, so they wanted them to act like demons without being held back by rules. Someone in Team 8 thought that if this was all they were capable of, it was over for them. Someone suddenly spoke up, asking how long they were going to act pitiful just because their team leader got hurt. Another guy, looking angry, asked who he was calling pitiful. The first man argued that sitting around complaining without even thinking about choosing a new leader or making a plan was definitely pitiful. Someone else chimed in, saying that only Prince Cheon Mu-gyum had leadership training and could take command. The first guy looked at them with a surprised expression, asking why they thought like that. Down below, someone smirked. Suddenly, one of the guys shouted that they had their master right there, Prince Cheon Yo Woon. The crowd in the room was shocked by this sudden announcement. As a result, all they could say was, 7th Prince? The others looked just as confused. Someone raised his hand. Cadet 38 agreed with the decision. He figured that since Yo Woon didn't back down from a fight with Cheon Mu-gyum, suddenly, the others agreed to the decision, wondering what they should do next. One of them said that since Prince Cheon Mu-gyum wasn't around, they should just agree for now, because passing the second test was more important. The man then asked if everyone agreed with him becoming the team leader. He grinned, satisfied with the outcome. He then mentioned something he had thought about during their formation training. It was midnight. Back at Team 8's quarters, one of the guys was sleeping like a log, but then someone started walking around. Suddenly, Yo Woon activated his night vision mode. The nanomachine confirmed that it was activating night vision in his field of view. The hallway shimmered under the green glow of night vision. Yo Woon sighed. He jumped from the roof. Yo Woon landed silently, using his hand to brace himself. He thought about how many times he had come to Team 7's quarters tonight. Yo Woon asked Nano if anyone was still awake at this hour. Nano started scanning room 7 to see who was awake, labeling everyone as asleep. Nano confirmed that all 20 people inside room 7 were sound asleep, which meant they were finally all sleeping. Satisfied, our hero jumped down from the window. He then asked Nano if the person who attacked Cheon Mu-gyum was in there, but after scanning everyone and comparing their body size to the attacker, Nano found no match. Suddenly, the hand started glowing with strange energy, and the man speaking said it didn't matter, and immediately, the guy was being electrocuted. He looked up, wondering if this guy was Team 7's leader. Turns out, it was Yo Woon, who asked what the man was. The man could only look at him in shock and disbelief. The masked man looked at the guy on the ground, thinking that he woke up because he was there. He figured the man was perceptive, as expected of Team 7's leader. The masked man was confident that there was no way the guy would recognize someone wearing a mask in the dark. He figured the guy would have trouble walking around properly for a while, since he'd used a needle to poke his muscles. The masked man stared, saying it wasn't the guy's fault, but he shouldn't resent him. The masked man wondered if he should move over to the next room, since he was done with Team 7. Turns out, the leader of Team 5 is Cheon-won Ryo. The masked person thought that the attacker wasn't a girl. Plus, Cheon-won Ryo couldn't beat Cheon-mu-gum in martial arts anyway. That meant the person who attacked Cheon-mu-gum was in Team 6. He saw that all 16 people in Team 6's quarters were sound asleep. The masked person realized there were supposed to be 20 people in Team 6. Even if they counted the 3 female cadets, someone was still missing. The masked person asked the nanomachine to find if anyone matched the attacker, but there was no match. So, the one who wasn't around was likely the culprit. The masked person wondered if the attacker had been on the first floor. They would have found him moving around earlier. He was now trying to figure out what to do, but then he paused, thinking about his strategy. He realized there was no rule that said he could only aim for the team leader. It was going to be an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. The guy with red hair figured that if the person was leading Team 8, it meant the Spring Clan kid got hurt by someone. Lee Hameng thought they had perfectly understood what the test meant, and this time the participants weren't disappointing. Lee Hameng then asked if they had all drawn. Since they had all prepared fairly for the test, he hoped they'd show good victories. The students looked at each other, wondering if it was really going to be fair. The guys from Team 8 walked down the stairs. Then, on the ground, the students were getting ready. Yo Woon stared at one of the guys and thought the eyes looked familiar. Yo Woon immediately ordered the nano to the guy. The system started scanning the guy's body. They came back, saying it was a 100% match based on height and body shape. The guy smirked after that. The second test round was about to begin. Team 1 versus Team 3, with the winning team being the one that suppressed the other. Lee Hameng yelled for the match to begin. At the same time, the fighters charged at each other, screaming. Cheon-mu-yeon, Team 1 leader from the Dark Clan, shouted that they were starting from the right. Someone noticed their diagonal formation and wondered about it. The panel showed diagrams of a normal formation versus the diagonal one. The two teams clashed, swords meeting shields in a brutal fight. The group advanced, pushing forward with their shields, and immediately, a massive explosion of energy erupted. The soldiers were getting pushed back, struggling to hold their ground. They screamed for their teammates to resist. One soldier managed to stab another. As a result, battle marks spilled from the soldier's mouth. Another soldier yelled, trying to get his teammates to come to their senses and get back in the fight. The soldier coughed up battle marks, clearly in pain. He fell to his knees, unable to stand anymore. The flags waved, symbolizing that it was their loss. The enemy stood over him, telling him to surrender. The soldier finally admitted that he lost. Lee Hameng thought the fight was pretty boring, since the other team wasn't that strong. The announcer congratulated Team 1 for winning and passing the second test. Then, it was announced that Team 4 had also won against Team 2, and the next teams were called forward to compete. It was finally Yo Woon's team's turn to fight, but the enthusiasm of his teammates had dropped, which wasn't good. Yo Woon noticed that his teammates looked nervous, so he asked if they were. He knew they were anxious because the team leader had changed, and he admitted he was nervous too. Yo Woon explained that if they didn't win, they'd be kicked out of the academy, and it was too early for that. He was also angry, and didn't want to lose to the scumbag who tried to make them face problems by attacking their team leader like a coward. Yo Woon told them that if they all felt the same way he did, they couldn't afford to lose. The team raised their swords, ready to win. Lee Hameng watched them, thinking that encouragement alone wasn't enough to guarantee victory. The guy thought they'd soon find out if Yo Woon was a panther or just a stray cat. The signal was given. The team that overpowers the opponent wins, and the fight could begin. Cheon-won Ryo, the leader of Team 5, clicked her tongue, wishing she was up against Cheon-mu-gum's team instead. The other guy told Yo Woon that he didn't belong there and that leaving the academy would be better for his pitiful life. Suddenly, Lee Hameng yelled for everyone to attack. Yo Woon activated his nanomachines to use augmented reality and start the strategy tutorial. The system activated augmented reality in his vision and started the battle tutorial. Yo Woon shouted for someone to wait. He was talking to number 2. The system showed that the opponents were changing to an arrow formation and told Yo Woon to change to a wedge formation. The guy with the shield said that they could only try to fight with them there. Someone shouted that it was number 6. He wondered about the wedge formation. formation. Li Hemeng wondered how he could make such a stupid decision right from the start and thought that the wedge formation was useless if the leading team leader was weak. He asked himself if he had expected too much from him. Li Hemeng attacked, yelling if Yo Won dared to fight against the true heir. The attack exploded with crazy force. Li Hemeng looked shocked and wondered what was going on. Li Hemeng couldn't believe that Yo Won had stopped his 10 stars defensive skill. Yo Won knew that his inner power was still lacking compared to Qian Wan Ryo, but if he considered his outer power, which was enhanced up to the teacher's level, he had the upper hand. Yo Won was having a blast. Li Hemeng realized he was being pushed back, and that if he didn't change the formation, the weaker guys at the back would make the formation fall apart. He wondered what the heck the boy had done. Crap, the formation was getting destroyed. Li Hemeng yelled at his team to back off and switch to formation number 1. The enemy had changed to a standard formation, so the guy ordered his team to change their formation to number 3. The enemy warriors were ready to fight. At the same time, one of them smirked, wondering about their formation. The guy wondered if they thought using a method already used by Team 1's leader would work on him. The warrior with the shield said that Qian Yo Won's Negong was impressive, but his tactics were terrible. Li Hemeng ordered his team to switch to formation number 6. Li Hemeng thought that their Negong skills were about the same, so he could break through the middle of their line formation with a wedge formation. Qian Yo Won charged forward, ready to attack. Li Hemeng grinned, thinking that the moment Qian Yo Won was separated from his team, he would end him. But Qian Yo Won just smirked back, as if he knew what was coming. Li Hemeng looked nervous, but Qian Yo Won looked calm and ready. Li Hemeng's team was shocked and stammered, wondering what was happening. Turns out, Qian Yo Won's team had split into 2 groups. The soldiers realized that they were being attacked from both sides in a pincer movement. Li Hemeng screamed at his team not to panic and to change to formation number 2. Li Hemeng realized that they were facing an arrow formation and ordered his team to concentrate on the front. But the soldiers were already getting attacked from behind, and they screamed for help. Li Hemeng was furious, wondering how those peasants were able to do this. The soldiers were running as fast as they could. At the same time, the soldiers were struggling to hold their ground, while Li Hemeng looked absolutely furious. The soldiers realized they were completely surrounded. Li Hemeng realized that the numbers they were given were a trick. The plan was to use the same training formation numbers against them. Yo Won thought that he would confuse the enemy team by switching up the original formation numbers. Li Hemeng was furious that this scumbag dared to play with him. Someone shouted, asking if it was Cheon Wan Ryo. Immediately after, the order was given to crush them. The soldiers started to look worried. The enemy soldiers pushed forward with their shields, and the men started to panic. The shields were dropped on the ground. Li Hemeng yelled, asking what they were doing and who told them to drop their shields. The soldiers were silent, looking down in shame. Li Hemeng screamed, realizing what was about to happen. He was scared that everyone would laugh at him. Li Hemeng looked up, screaming Qian Yo Won's name in terror. Li Hemeng screamed, calling him a piece of trash. The soldiers tried to defend themselves, but they were too slow. Li Hemeng used his fiery slice of the ignited sword technique. Qian Yo Won didn't even flinch and countered with his own sword. Qian Yo Won's attack landed, and battle marks splattered everywhere. The sword cut deep, and battle marks splattered everywhere. Qian Yo Won moved so fast that his sword left trails of light. The young master's eyes were locked on his target. Our hero's sword cut through the soldiers like they were nothing. The soldiers around him were scared stiff, watching their friends get cut down. At the same time, Li Hemeng looked on in total shock. The young master didn't slow down, and his sword kept cutting through the soldiers. Our hero stood over the bodies of the fallen soldiers. One of the soldiers gasped. She realized what was happening. The woman screamed about her arm being gone. The woman screamed, realizing her arm had been cut off, and told her teammates to stop the bleeding. Qian Yo Won's face was covered in battle marks, but he stayed calm, realizing that the sword wasn't strong enough. Li Hemeng thought he had stopped Qian Yo Won's sword, but he realized the last move was incomplete, and he yelled in pain. Qian Yo Won looked down at his opponent and said he was going to kill him, realizing the training sword had its limits. It was announced that Team 8, led by Cadet 7, had won and passed the second test. The crowd went wild, cheering for Cheon Yo Won. Li Hemeng was surprised that Cheon Yo Won used the 7 butterfly connections. He knew that the young master was still lacking in Negong, but his movements were nearly on the same level as Shob Mayang. He wondered what the drunkard had done to him. Li Hemeng knew that it wasn't just because of Seob Mayang's teaching. Cheon Yo Won had grown overwhelmingly in all aspects within 21 days. Below, the group of people were in formation. He was amazed by the young master's tactics and strategies, as well as being daring enough to cut off Cheon Wan Ryo's arm. He thought he was a genius. Lee Hameng wondered if he should have taken Cheon Yo-woon in and as his disciple before So Mang did, but realized that wouldn't work since he was the owner of the academy. Turns out, Cheon Yo-woon wasn't going to be happy about all this. The guy with the shield realized that the young master had beaten the Sound Clan and was hiding his martial arts. He needed to remember him since he had basically showed everyone what he was truly capable of. The announcer called for the third competition group to come forward. The group marched forward, ready for the fight. One of the fighters realized that he thought he had avoided something properly. One of the fighters realized that he hadn't even considered the fact that the crazy guy who messed up his team and used the time when he wasn't around to cripple everyone's legs was Cheon Yo-woon. Our hero smirked, knowing he had done a good job tricking everyone the whole time. Meanwhile, one of the members of Team 7 was saying that everyone except the team leader was limping. He thought they should be able to beat them easily if they attacked boldly. He didn't know who did it, but he was thankful. The order was given, and the group charged forward in the 6th formation. But one of the warriors realized that they couldn't do anything because their legs were injured. Yo-woon grinned, telling the trash that they should be thankful for the rest of their lives. The group tried to switch to an arrow formation, but one of the warriors laughed, asking what good a formation was when everyone was limping. Yo-woon moved with incredible speed, his sword ready to strike. At the same time, the warrior screamed as he raised his shield, trying to defend himself from the attack. But Yo-woon's sword cut right through the shield like it was nothing. The warrior screamed, realizing his shield was useless. Yo-woon didn't hesitate and brought his sword down on the warrior. The warrior coughed up battle marks, his eyes wide with shock as he realized what had just happened. He screamed as he was pushed back, the force of the blow almost unbearable. The warrior was sent flying back from the sheer power of the attack. He stammered in shock, unable to believe what was happening to them. Another warrior screamed that they were being pushed back, fear in his voice. Another warrior screamed as the sword pierced right through his neck, killing him instantly. The warriors were ordered to suppress them all and not let anyone stand back up. Lee Hameng watched the scene unfold, muttering in disbelief. Yo-woon continued his assault, striking another warrior. Yo-woon stood tall among the fallen, his presence overwhelming. Yo-woon, covered in battle marks, warned that someone was next. Suddenly, a warrior shouted Cheon Yo-woon's name. Yo-woon smirked, realizing he'd made an annoying enemy. The announcement rang out. Team 7 had won the 3rd round. Back at the Mado House's main hall, back at the academy owner's office, a group of men sat around a table. Lee Hameng announced that he had the list of everyone who failed, including their grades up to Team 5. Another man noted that a lot of people failed this time and asked if Lee Hameng was talking about the higher clans. Lee Hameng explained that those without clans just wanted to be guards, so it didn't matter. But the higher clan's heirs might feel wronged since they would have made it to the 3rd round if it wasn't for the group test. The man replied that something like this wouldn't have happened if they had used the same rules as the old demonic academy guide, but there was nothing they could do about it. One of the men at the table argued that if they didn't reassign the failed participants positions and duties based on their performance, the higher clans would protest. Lee Hameng chimed in, saying that the higher clan's heirs would grow well with their own martial arts, but it was unfortunate that the middle and lower clans lost their chance at getting the medicine ball and entering the precious library. Lee Hameng added that the ones who passed the 2nd test had to be gathered at the precious library, the Mado House. Precious library stood tall and imposing. A group of people made their way towards the library, ready to see what awaited them. Yo-woon was impressed by the precious library, thinking it looked even bigger than the main hall. He realized the other students had already been to the 1st floor while he was recovering, so he wondered if today they'd be going to the 2nd floor. Suddenly, a man told him he needed to put all his effort into mastering the butterfly sword and the spring dance breathing method. That was the only way he'd pass the test. The man clarified that he was talking about the precious library. He thought it was useless. The man added that Yo-woon was already learning martial arts from the 4th and 5th floors, so he shouldn't be sad about missing the 1st floor. The man boasted that there was nothing that could even compare to his martial arts there. But Yo-woon thought to himself that he had the nano. He was gonna as much as he could from both the 1st and 2nd floors. He lit a candle candle to see better. Yo-woon was on the first floor of the precious library, and it was the first time he'd ever seen so many books. He figured he was the only one there. Yo-woon knew he only had 2 hours on the first floor, so he needed to hurry. He told the nano to as he quickly looked through the precious books. Turns out, he was scanning 5 arts of blade mastery. The was starting. The was complete. The was complete. Yo-woon asked the nano how much time he had left. The nano told him he had 1 hour left, and he had scanned 55 books, including sword mastery and breathing techniques. He told the nano not to send those to his brain yet, since he had only looked at the outer border books. Yo-woon wondered if he should check the inner shelves too. Yo-woon then looked at a giant rock in the room. The warrior wondered if the young master was an expert, and if he was the one who protected the first floor of the library. Yo-woon wondered why there was a gravestone in the middle of the library. The warrior stared intently. The warrior's shirt had a strange symbol on it. The warrior explained that the gravestone was left by the main academy's founder, the heavenly demon ancestor. Yo-woon was surprised to hear about the heavenly demon ancestor. The warrior explained that the words were carved into sapphire. It looked like there was a poem written on it. He wondered what it meant. Yo-woon was shocked. He realized that the writing was carved with a finger. The warrior thought it was amazing that the ancestor focused his energy into his finger to write on the sapphire, something that's hard to scratch, even with a sword and large amounts of energy. The warrior explained that people usually try to read the books and don't pay attention to the carving, but Yo-woon found the ancestor's trace because he's his bloodline. He admitted that he almost missed it too. Yo-woon said that was to be expected. The warrior continued, saying that no one would pay attention to a gravestone with a poem when there are so many books around. He's been protecting this place for over 20 years, but no one has ever noticed it. He added that includes the descendant of the heavenly family. The warrior apologized for taking up so much of Yo-woon's time and told him to keep doing what he was doing, saying he understood. Yo-woon suddenly noticed something strange. He wondered what it could be. Turns out, there were marks from sharp objects on the back of the gravestone, like someone was hiding something. Yo-woon ordered Nano to analyze the traces. Nano started analyzing the surface of the gravestone, and the analysis was quickly completed. According to the analysis, the traces were left by the sharp blade of a sword. Yo-woon wondered why there would be sword marks there. Yo-woon was shocked that someone would do this to the heavenly demon ancestor's gravestone. According to Nano's analysis, it looked like 2 people made those marks. He couldn't believe it. Yo-woon looked closely at the marks on the gravestone, but he couldn't tell anything just by looking. So, Yo-woon ordered Nano to show him the sword traces in 3D. He instantly noticed a huge difference in the strength and angle of each sword. It was easy to miss that 2 different people made these marks. Yo-woon wondered if someone tried to hide the original scarring by making even more messy scars on top of it. Maybe. Yo-woon asked Nano if it could tell the difference between the 2 people's sword traces, and then ordered it to get rid of the sword traces, except for the ones that were there first. Nano got to work, analyzing the sword traces. Yo-woon was shocked by what he was seeing. Yo-woon realized that these weren't just normal sword traces. It was actually a complex sword movement. He stared at the sword traces, realizing it was made up of untold formations. Yo-woon frowned, realizing he couldn't tell what kind of movement it was just from looking at it. He was still lacking in understanding. Yo-woon asked Nano if it could analyze these sword traces and simulate it as an augmented video. Nano confirmed that it was possible, but before that, Nano needed to know the hardness of the sapphire to analyze the person's strength. Yo-woon wondered how he was supposed to figure that out, thinking to himself that there was no way Nano was telling him to break it. The supervisor walked up to Yo-woon, surprised. He asked if Yo-woon wasn't supposed to be reading books. The supervisor pointed out that Yo-woon had also seen the back of the stone. He commented that it was quite a mess, right? The supervisor said it was unfortunate. He explained that there used to be rumors that the heavenly demon ancestor left a sword technique of his epiphany there. Yo-woon repeated the phrase, the heavenly demon ancestor's epiphany. The supervisor frowned, wondering who would damage the back of the gravestone. He clicked his tongue, clearly annoyed. The supervisor suggested that maybe they did it so that only they could use the ancestor's epiphany. Yo-woon wondered if the marks were just random damage. He thought to himself, asking if these traces were really just vandalism. The supervisor told Yo-woon that he was leaving to make rounds. He added that Yo-woon should look around before he left. Yo-woon thought to himself that, fortunately, the supervisor was leaving. Nano explained that the hardness of the sapphire could be measured by placing a hand on the surface. Yo-woon acknowledged, realizing he could do that now. He placed his hand on the gravestone to measure the hardness of the sapphire. Yo-woon touched the surface, activating Nano's analysis. He groaned, annoyed that it was loading. Nano announced that the investigation into the stone's hardness was complete. With diamond at a hardness of 10, the sapphire was a 7. Yo-woon was impressed, saying it was really hard. Yo-woon stared at the gravestone, wondering who could have ruined the original sword traces with their own. Using the analysis of the stone's hardness, the sword traces were now being simulated as an augmented video. The augmented video simulation was starting. Yo-woon started to ask who did this, but Nano cut him off, saying that conversation was not supported. The sword trace simulation was starting. The augmented video simulation showed the first sword movement. A golden figure swung a sword with incredible speed. The golden figure moved with impossible speed. The sword flashed, leaving trails of light. Yo-woon was stunned by the complexity of the sword movements. The simulation continued to play out as Yo-woon watched, completely absorbed. Yo-woon was determined to understand every single movement. Yo-woon called out to Nano in shock. Yo-woon asked if this was one movement. Nano responded that the analysis showed all the formations connected. According to his martial arts knowledge, it was one movement. Yo-woon's eyes widened. There was no way. He thought back to the butterfly sword technique, which was made up of 8 formations. Even that had taken him half a year to master, but this couldn't even be compared to that. He realized that it was impossible to annul this technique. Yo-woon couldn't believe his luck. He hadn't expected anything from the first floor of the library, but he had stumbled upon a real opportunity. He told Nano to save the movement so he could transfer it later. Nano confirmed that he understood. Yo-woon realized he could have easily missed this treasure because of the messy sword traces. He figured that whoever left these marks must be quite evil, but then he thought that maybe he should be thankful. After all, only he had earned this movement. Nano began to explain the analysis of the sword traces after removing the mess. Movements that were interconnected had been found. Nano explained that 45 movements had been carved according to time. Yo-woon was shocked. They weren't sword traces to cover the technique, but were all sword movements instead. Yo-woon thought about it for a second. Maybe. He ordered Nano to simulate the sword movements in order as an augmented video. Nano confirmed. Nano showed the first sword movement. The simulation continued, displaying the 2nd, 3rd, and 10th movements. The 20th and 30th movements flashed before his eyes. Yo-woon watched as the movements were becoming more and more perfect. Nano announced that the augmented video simulation had finished. Yo-woon looked a little surprised as the augmented video simulation finished. He snapped back to reality. Yo-woon asked Nano if it could make the initially saved sword movement and the 45th sword movement fight against each other through augmented video. Nano confirmed that it was possible. A wide grin spread across Yo-woon's face. Nano activated battle mode in augmented video. The two figures clashed, their movements a blur of light and energy. Yo-woon's eyes widened in disbelief. The green figure struck the final blow, sending the gold figure crashing to the ground. Yo-woon looked completely stunned. It got annulled. Yo-woon realized that the first movement he thought was perfect, with just a difference of one formation. This wasn't just trying to get rid of the movements from before. The 45 sword traces were the record of the long process of trying to annul the original movement. Yo-woon asked the supervisor if the first floor was the only floor with a sapphire gravestone. The supervisor replied that he had only worked on the first floor, so he didn't know exactly, but he had heard that there was one on every floor. Yo-woon smiled. He told Nano to get ready because they were going to the 2nd floor. They had arrived at the Motto House Precious Library, 2nd floor. Yo-woon noticed that the others weren't finished yet. He figured it was because the first floor's reading time was 2 hours and the 2nd floor's was 3 hours. Suddenly, Yo-woon recognized someone in the library. That guy was the Blade Clan's Cheon-yu-chan. The other clan heirs didn't even come here because they were overconfident about their own clan's martial arts. Yo-woon thought to himself that Cheon-yu-chan must be a careful guy, seeing as how he was even studying the low-level martial arts. He should be more careful of him compared to the others. The library was full of students, quietly reading. Yo-woon stood in front of a gravestone. It was here. He wondered what was on the back. Yo-woon smirked, as he thought. The gravestone's surface was completely scratched up with sword traces. Yo-woon told Nano to analyze these like it did on the first floor. Nano confirmed. Nano found the same sword traces from the first floor. The first sword trace was a sword movement made up of 24 formations. The sword traces left by the other person were 56 sword movements. Yo-Woon reacted. 56? Yo-Woon realized that they must have done more research to annul the first movement that was carved here as compared to the first floor. Yo-Woon wanted to check it right away, but it would be hard since there were a lot of eyes here. He told Nano to extract only the sword movements and save them. Nano confirmed. Yo-Woon thought to himself that he had earned 4 incomparable movements. He was looking forward to when he could transfer it to his brain and body. Yo-Woon told Nano to start the scan. Someone slammed their book on the table in frustration. The students continued to pore over their books, trying to decipher the ancient texts. Cheon-Yu-chan muttered about what that bastard was doing. He couldn't believe it. Cheon-Yu-chan complained that it was hard to learn anything, even if you read the words one by one. But that guy was just flicking through everything. Cheon-Yu-chan told himself that he needed to focus. There was no time to pay attention to that bastard. They only had an hour left. Yo-Woon looked satisfied as he held the book. Nano announced that the scan had been flipped through the book, his expression unreadable. He seemed to be searching for something specific, his eyes scanning each page intently. A student watched him from the background. Nano announced that a total of 156 books had been scanned so far. The AI then told Yo-Woon to analyze all the books that were scanned today and save the data to the program's data. Nano confirmed that it understood the instructions. It added that this should be enough. Now, there was only one thing left. The fighter stated that he was confident that the original butterfly sword technique was among the main academy's top 10 martial arts. However, he cautioned against overconfidence, no matter how good someone's martial arts were. The fighter continued, saying that understanding was exceptional, but to master martial arts properly, one needed to practice formations and movements hundreds and thousands of times. A voice emphasized that experience was the most important thing. It seemed that the speaker was about to explain how to get that experience. The man explained that his student had to go through many hardships and difficulties fighting enemies to understand martial arts. That was why the academy was a great place to build experience, by fighting with those of different clans and those without clans there. Yo-Woon thought to himself that all that was left was to try out Nano's augmented reality ability. If it went according to plan, he'd be able to get a variety of hands-on experience. Someone noted that someone else wasn't late. It seemed like someone was checking people in. The man at the desk told someone that they could go. The man confirmed that he understood. Yo-Woon glanced back, hearing that someone had asked when he would come out. He then asked the man what he meant by that. The man was standing behind him, listening intently. The man writing on a scroll said it was nothing. He kept writing, trying to avoid the topic. He seemed a bit flustered. Yo-Woon wondered if someone had waited for him, but he quickly shook it off, deciding that wasn't important right now. He was ready to get to training. He explained that the individual training rooms would be completely open after the second test. The young man wanted to quickly go there to transfer the special movements to Nano. He looked excited at the prospect. Yo-Woon made his way to the Motto House individual training facility. He was eager to use the training rooms. The place seemed pretty empty. Yo-Woon made his way through the training facility. He seemed deep in thought, his expression unreadable as he walked. Suddenly, a man appeared, blocking Yo-Woon's path. He said that he had been looking for him everywhere, because he wasn't at his quarters. The guy looked angry and ready for a fight. Yo-Woon recognized him as Cadet 7, the leader of Team 6 in the second test. He asked the man why he was looking for him. He seemed genuinely confused. Cadet 7 stared intensely at Yo-Woon. He asked if he was really asking that because he didn't know. He looked like he was about to lose his temper. Cadet 7 accused Yo-Woon of being the one who messed up his teammates' legs. The young man looked shocked by the accusation. Cadet 7 said he was damn busy and looked ready to fight. The guy's eyes glowed with a dangerous light as he glared at Yo-Woon. Cadet 7 noticed the bloodlust in the air and figured Yo-Woon wanted to fight. He asked who told him to leave his teammates alone. He crossed his arms, looking confident. Yo-Woon just smirked, clearly amused by the accusation. He seemed to be enjoying this confrontation. Yo-Woon replied that it was thanks to a certain someone. He held out his hand, his smile growing wider. Yo-Woon added that Cadet 7 wasn't reacting to his provocation like someone else would. He seemed to be testing the man's patience. Cadet 7 realized realized this guy wasn't weak and he needed to face him seriously. He shouted to get the others' attention, his eyes narrowing in focus. At the same time, Yo-woon and Cadet 7 were locked in a silent battle of wills. The sparks flew as they prepared to unleash their martial arts skills. Meanwhile, Cheon-Yu-chan was standing there, feeling completely ignored. He complained that they weren't even acknowledging him, looking pretty annoyed. Yo-woon and Cadet 7 clashed, their movements a blur of speed and power. The force of their blows created gusts of wind around them as they fought. Yo-woon's eyes widened in shock. Something unexpected had just happened, catching him completely off guard. Yo-woon looked completely shocked. He was probably wondering what was going on. Cheon-Yu-chan laughed, identifying himself as from the Blade clan. He added that both of them had great focus, as expected of team leaders who passed the second test. Cheon-Yu-chan was still smiling as he spoke. He apologized for the wait, but asked if he could have the other guy first, saying it would only take a moment. Cheon-Yu-chan bowed his head slightly as he made the request, and immediately, Cadet 7's expression changed. Cadet 7 was furious and demanded to know what he meant by letting him have him first. The guy had been looking for this scumbag all day, so he told Cheon-Yu-chan to get lost before he got angry. Cadet 7 was thinking what he should do, since he had waited to see the guy. He was clearly expecting a fight. Cadet 7 was getting angry. He thought the other guy was a total scumbag. Cadet 7 attacked with red energy. He couldn't believe the guy dared to look down on him like that. Cheon-Yu-chan was still smiling. He thought the other guy was pretty feisty, but Cheon-Yu-chan wasn't worried. He was clearly about to attack. Cadet 7's eyes glowed with intense focus. He was determined to win this fight, no matter what it took. Cheon-Yu-chan blocked the attack with a smile. He clearly wasn't taking the fight seriously. Cheon-Yu-chan looked at him and asked how he liked that. He seemed to be enjoying himself. Cadet 7 was shocked. He realized that Cheon-Yu-chan had stopped his move with a simple stance, and he wondered if the other guy's skills were really that advanced. Cadet 7 was furious. He couldn't believe he was being suppressed so easily by this scumbag who wasn't even in a proper stance. Cadet 7 noticed that Cheon-Yu-chan was off balance. He pointed out that the other guy's arm became stiff whenever he took a step. He asked if Cheon-Yu-chan had an injury on his ribs or something, looking closely at him. Cheon-Yu-chan was getting annoyed. He thought to himself that this scumbag was definitely not on the level of an average cadet. Even if his body was in its original state, he was having trouble. Cadet 7 smirked at Cheon-Yu-chan. He told him that it would only be a moment, so he should just wait right there. The young man seemed confident. Cheon-Yu-chan clicked his tongue, looking away. He said, whatever, clearly annoyed by the other guy's attitude. Cheon-Yu-chan threw his arms out, yelling for Cadet 7 to do what he wanted. He was clearly frustrated and wanted to get this over with. Cheon-Yu-chan was laughing, saying that Cadet 7 had a short temper. He wondered what business the guy had with him. He asked if the other cadet was trying to suppress him before the next tests. Cheon-Yu-chan realized that whatever was going on, he wouldn't be able to face the other cadet with just his current skills. He looked seriously concerned. Cadet 7 told Nano to activate augmented reality and battle tutorial mode, setting it to butterfly sword technique. Nano confirmed that augmented reality had been activated in the user's vision and that action command mode was operating through the battle tutorial. Cadet 7 looked surprised and asked Cheon-Yu-chan why he was so on edge. The young man seemed genuinely confused by the other's reaction. Cheon-Yu-chan crossed his arms, saying, "Oh well," and asking if it was a given from his position. He seemed resigned to the situation. Cheon-Yu-chan told Cadet 7 not to be so cautious. He said that this was just their first greeting as brothers with the same father. The young man was being overly friendly. Cheon-Yu-chan clasped his hands together. He seemed to be trying to appear friendly and respectful. The gesture looked almost mocking, though. Cheon-Yu-chan smiled widely, saying it was nice to meet the other cadet, brother. He seemed to be enjoying himself. The guy looked way too happy. Yo-woon stared back, his expression intense. Cheon-Mukiam asked if the protagonist was surprised, since he thought it would be. Yo-woon asked Cheon-Mukiam if he was serious, because he had been waiting in front of the library the whole time and wasn't joking. Cheon-Mukiam said that he didn't think of the protagonist as an enemy, and he wanted him to join the Blade clan and protect him. Yo-woon was shocked, asking if Cheon-Mukiam was telling him to give up on becoming the clan heir. Cheon-Mukiam laughed asking if he sounded like that, but continued. He said it was too hard for Yo Woon anyway. Yo Woon asked what he meant by that. Cheon Mukium said it was as Yo Woon heard. Cheon Mukium declared that if Yo Woon walked the path of the sword, he would definitely have to face him, but he had no chance. Cheon Mukium said he had become a passionate fan of his, and if they walked the same path together, Yo Woon's future would be bright. Yo Woon looked at him, confused. Yo Woon decided he would just ask for something else. Yo Woon warned that Cheon Mukium wouldn't be able to handle him, so he shouldn't block his way. He'd at least let him keep his life then. Yo Woon and Cheon Mukium stood facing each other in the courtyard. Cheon Mukium's expression changed, his eyes glowing with power. The nanomachine analyzed Cheon Mukium's movements, warning that he was focusing a lot of energy into his right hand. Yo Woon realized this was the beginning of a fight. Cheon Mukium's hand shot out towards Yo Woon with incredible speed. Yo Woon stared at Cheon Mukium, his expression unreadable. Cheon Mukium suddenly burst out laughing, the energy he'd been gathering just fading away. Turns out, he wasn't gonna attack after all. Cheon Mukium admitted that he got angry for a moment, but then he thought about it and found it funny. Cheon Mukium thought it would be kind of cool if Yo Woon didn't get in his way. Yo Woon looked at him, a slight smile on his face, but something felt off about it. Cheon Mukium looked down at Yo Woon and thought that it was a waste of effort. He said that they would meet again since they were walking the same path. However, Yo Woon could sense a strong energy being focused on his enemy's right hand. Cheon Mukium didn't waste any time and launched a powerful attack. Yo Woon was shocked by the sudden attack. It turns out that Cheon Mukium was using blade chi. Cheon Mukium smirked, saying that Yo Woon wasn't strong enough to be a threat to him. Yo Woon realized that Cheon Mukium must have mastered his skills, since he was able to diffuse blade chi with his bare hands. He knew that the rumors about Cheon Mukium fighting Cheon Muyeon for the clan heir position were true. Yo Woon smirked, realizing that they were on different levels. Cheon Mukium turned to leave. Cheon Mukium looked back, telling Yo Woon that he'll see him next time. Yo Woon clenched his fist, thinking that he thought he was on the same level as them after having beaten Cheon Mugum and having Cheon Wan Ryo expelled from the academy. But then he heard someone say not to rush himself. The voice continued, saying that the goal isn't to catch up to them, but to reign over them. Yo Woon stood alone in the courtyard, thinking about the encounter. Yo Woon realized that Cheon Mukium had read his attack beforehand. He had been aiming to cut off Cheon Mukium's right arm, but Cheon Mukium escaped the attack before he could even use his blade. Yo Woon smiled, realizing that Cheon Mukium was different from the others. The scene shifted to the Mado House individual training room. Yo Woon opened the door and wondered if this was the individual training room. He looked around, realizing the room was about 2.5 meters wide and long, not big enough to practice his formation with shadow steps. He knocked on the stone wall, noting that it was pretty thick. Because of that, he figured he could study without anyone bothering him. Even if he could only gather internal energy here, it should be enough. Yo Woon told Nano to activate an augmented reality, and the system confirmed it was activating in his vision. Yo Woon told Nano to simulate the formations scanned from the sapphire gravestone on the second floor, in the order they were carved. The simulation started, showing a figure moving with incredible speed and precision. Yo Woon realized it was faster and more complicated than the one from the first floor. He knew that even if he used the last formation of the butterfly dance, he wouldn't be able to block even one movement. He wondered how many people would even be able to block this formation. Then, he told Nano to simulate the formation left by the other person in order of age. The simulation continued, showing the first, second, and third movements. The simulation of the sapphire gravestone formation continued, showing the 56th attempt. Yo Woon was shocked, realizing that mastering a sword technique to this level required complete dedication. He could tell just by looking at the process of perfecting one formation. Yo Woon was getting a shiver down his spine, seeing how the awkward and unnatural formation became so perfect by the 56th attempt. So, he told Nano to have the originally carved formation battle with the other 56 formations in order. The clash of swords was like a storm of pure energy ripping through the air. It was a brutal dance of power, and neither side was giving an inch. The fight ended as suddenly as it had begun. Yo Woon sat there, looking up, still surrounded by the echoes of the battle. Yo Woon looked completely confused. He wondered out loud what had just happened. Yo Woon was sure he'd been focused on the fight. He asked himself if he had fallen into a trance without without realizing it. Yo-woon stared down at his hand, feeling something was off. He said that there was no way this was happening. Yo-woon closed his eyes, feeling the energy flowing around him. He focused all his energy, trying to understand what was happening inside him. Suddenly, Yo-woon's eyes snapped open. He was clearly shocked by what he was feeling. Yo-woon stared at his hand, which was glowing with power. He realized that his internal energy had suddenly jumped from 30 to 40 years worth. He wondered if he had finally gained a true understanding. Yo-woon lay there, thinking about what had just happened. He realized that he had gained a deeper understanding without Nano's help. Those formations were really worth their reputation as Murum's best martial arts. Yo-woon smirked, feeling the new power flowing through him. He felt like he could use the butterfly dance better than ever before. Yo-woon felt a surge of power as he moved. The way he was cutting through the air was different, he realized. His newfound understanding wasn't just about the increase in his internal energy. There was something more. Suddenly, Yo-woon stopped, looking completely shocked. He couldn't believe what was happening. Yo-woon stared at his hand, a strange blue energy forming around it. Had he just materialized chi? He was starting to understand the full scope of his new abilities. Yo-woon realized he couldn't form a proper sword shape just yet, since he didn't have enough internal energy. But he knew that would change soon. Once he got his hands on that medicine ball, he'd have 60 years worth of internal energy. When that happened, the gap between him and Cheon Yu-chan would shrink dramatically. Yo-woon turned his attention to Nano, asking how long he'd been in that state. Nano responded that it was 2 hours. 2 hours? Yo-woon was shocked that so much time had passed without him even realizing it. Yo-woon figured it would be hard to transfer everything over to his body, since he needed to head back to his quarters. He told Nano to transfer the formations that were carved on the sapphire gravestones on floors 1 and 2, as well as the 45th and 56th formations, right into his brain. Nano confirmed that the 4 formations were being selected for transfer. Yo-woon held his head, wondering when these headaches would finally stop. He asked Nano how long it would take to transfer all of this new knowledge into his body. Nano's analysis came back, stating that it would take 10 hours to fully transform his muscles and energy flow. What? 10 hours? Yo-woon asked, frustrated that it was taking way too long compared to the butterfly dance. Even if it was a different level of martial art, Yo-woon knew it couldn't be helped. He'd need to come out earlier. He decided to head back for the day. Back at the Mado House Team 8 quarters, Yo-woon noticed that a lot of the cadets weren't there. He wondered if they hadn't come back from their training rooms yet. As Yo-woon walked in, he was greeted by Hyo-bong. Hyo-bong bowed respectfully, asking if Yo-woon had come first. The notes Hyo-bong held were covered in text, filled with diagrams and scribbled corrections. It looked like he'd been studying hard. Hyo-bong explained that everyone was studying and practicing what they'd memorized from the library. He asked if Yo-woon had gained something good, adding that he had only studied a second-class martial art and a step technique because he was weak at bare fist techniques. Hyo-bong added that it was a time when everyone was throwing themselves into work. He said that the 4 days that were given for rest weren't a time to just waste away. The point was clear. If you wanted to step forward even just a little bit, then you couldn't spend this period of time uselessly. The next day, as the sun began to set, the Mado House was quiet. Inside the individual training facility at Mado House, the transformation of the user's muscles and energy flow reached 100% completion. He was surrounded by a strange blue energy. The system announced it was canceling sleep mode. Yo-woon sat up, his face flushed. Yo-woon grunted, his face contorting with the strain. The transformation was taking its toll. Yo-woon collapsed back onto the floor, exhausted. The system announced that it was proceeding with the stabilization of the body's biological reaction to the transformation. Yo-woon sat up, panting hard. He said that he could finally live now that the transformation was over. Yo-woon looked down at his hands, clenching them into fists. He admitted that he couldn't get used to the transformation, no matter how many times he went through it. He focused his internal energy, feeling the power surge through his body. The energy crackled around his fist, ready to be unleashed. Yo-woon stared at his fist, his eyes wide with surprise. He realized that the strength he could put into his hand was on a completely different level. It felt like he'd become much stronger than when he mastered the butterfly dance. Yo-woon lowered his head, thinking about his new strength. He was now stronger than ever before, and he had no idea what he was going to do with all this power. Yo-woon stared at his own body, eyes wide. He thought that he was blessed to see such muscles, even though it didn't quite feel like his own body for some reason. Yo-woon turned away, looking at the training room wall. He could feel the power humming beneath his skin, a constant reminder of how much he had changed. Yo-woon focused his energy into his hand, feeling it gather like a storm. The air crackled around his fingers, ready to explode with force. Yo-woon sat down, closing his eyes. He needed to calm down and think about what had just happened, letting the energy flow through him. Yo-woon realized that his skills weren't enough, and he had been too confident after hurting Cheon Mujum. Now that he had experienced the difference between him and that Blade Clan guy, he needed to study a lot more to get his dignity back. The man closed his eyes, thinking that he needed to forget about the likes of Cheon Yo-woon. He needed to aim for something bigger, something that would truly test his strength. He sat there, meditating, and thought about aiming for something bigger. He knew that he was capable of so much more, and he wasn't going to waste his time on small fries. Suddenly, the training room exploded. The force of the blast sent rocks and debris flying everywhere, leaving a gaping hole in the wall. The man screamed as something slammed into him. Blood splattered across his face, and he stumbled back, trying to figure out what the hell just happened. He looked up, his eyes wide with shock. He stammered, wondering if it was an assassin who had just attacked him. The man looked up at the massive hole he had created, his face covered in blood. He couldn't believe what had just happened. Who would dare to do something like this? He realized it was Cheon Yo-woon who had done this. That damn scumbag, he thought. He shouted, trying to wake up whoever was unconscious nearby. The man pointed at the gaping hole in the wall, furious. How could anyone be so reckless as to punch through the walls of the cadet training area? What if someone had been seriously meditating? They could have been killed. Lee Hameng scolded Cheon Yo-woon, telling him to be thankful that Cadet 108 was still alive. If not, Cheon Yo-woon would have been kicked out of the academy. Lee Hameng warned that this would be going on his record. Cheon Yo-woon just apologized. Lee Hameng told Cheon Yo-woon that he wasn't allowed to use the training rooms on the first and second floors anymore. He could use the rooms in the basement, but if he broke those too, he wouldn't be allowed to use any of the individual training rooms ever again. Cheon Yo-woon said he understood and would be more careful. The man stood there, watching Cheon Yo-woon walk away. He was lost in thought, trying to understand the power he had just witnessed. Cheon Yo-woon walked away from the training room, his mind racing. He was thinking about his internal energy and how it had exceeded its limit. Cheon Yo-woon stared at the hole in the wall, a look of disbelief on his face. He asked Nano why he had become so strong, admitting he never thought he could punch a hole through the training room wall. Nano explained that Cheon Yo-woon's muscles and energy flow had reached their maximums. Nano continued, stating that his muscles and energy flow in his body had been transformed to their utmost, to the point where he could leave traces on Sapphire with his physical strength. Cheon Yo-woon looked at his hands, realizing something. He thought about how the simulation data was created by analyzing the traces left on the gravestone without the actual movements being shown. He started to understand. The thought suddenly struck him. Was the focus on leaving traces on the sapphire stone instead of perfecting the formation on purpose? Cheon Yo-woon looked at his hand, wondering if his current power was his body's limit. Nano explained that it was the result of slightly altering his body to avoid affecting his physical growth based on his estimated growth data. Cheon Yo-woon asked if he could become stronger by growing more. Nano confirmed that his limits for muscle and energy flow transformations would increase if his physique grew completely. Cheon Yo-woon resolved to try harder, understanding that time was the key and that Nano could only stimulate his growth plates. Suddenly, Lee Hameng appeared, looking absolutely furious. He yelled that they hadn't joined there yet and threatened them to join, or it wouldn't end well. The crowd began to chant, demanding that everyone use the link and join there. It was a full-on advertisement attack. The individual training facility, basement, was silent and empty. It was the perfect place to practice. Cheon Yo-woon took a deep breath. Even though he had decades of practice data on the movements sent to his brain, he was still nervous. It was his first time actually trying out the absolute technique, the one that might be the heavenly demon ancestor's greatest idea. Cheon Yo-woon closed his eyes for a moment, trying to focus. He mumbled that he would start with the absolute sword technique. He began the absolute sword technique, starting the first movement. Blue energy swirled around him as he tried to get the motion right. Suddenly, Cheon Yo-woon stopped, looking frustrated. He told himself to hold on. Cheon Yo-woon planted his feet firmly on the ground, dust swirling around him. He was going to try this one more time, no matter what. He swung his sword, blue energy crackling around him, but something was off. Cheon Yo-woon Woon realized it wasn't working. This wasn't the absolute sword technique. Cheon Woon looked absolutely confused. Why? Why did the movement feel so unsatisfying? It didn't make any sense. He changed his approach and began the destructive sword technique. The 45th formation flowed out of him. Cheon Woon grinned. The destructive sword technique was perfect both times. He finally got something right. Cheon Woon wondered why the absolute sword felt so incomplete. It was nothing like the harmonious movement he'd seen in the augmented video. He told Nano to compare his current movements to the absolute movement extracted from the Sapphire video. Suddenly, the system announced that it was activating augmented reality in Cheon Woon's vision. He braced himself, ready to see the comparison. Two figures appeared before him, glowing in different colors. He could see the subtle differences in their movements, the flow of energy, and the precision of each swing. The figures moved in perfect synchronization, highlighting the imperfections in Cheon Woon's movements. The energy crackled around them, a stark reminder of the power he couldn't quite grasp. Cheon Woon realized that his movements were connected, but unnatural. He was even a beat slower in completing it. He was getting frustrated, asking himself why he couldn't get it right. Cheon Woon fell to the ground, looking absolutely furious. He was asking himself what the hell was going wrong with the technique. He stared intensely, trying to figure out the issue. Cheon Woon realized that even if he didn't have the right energy flow, it shouldn't affect the movement. Suddenly, Cheon Woon's eyes widened. He realized it had something to do with the energy flow. Cheon Woon held his head in his hands, looking dejected. He realized that even the last formation of the butterfly dance couldn't be performed properly without circulating the internal energy the right way, which meant he was missing the most important part. He sat there quietly, trying to figure out how to solve the problem. The energy of the glowing stone pulsed around him as he thought. Young Master Cheon Woon asked Nano to create an augmented video of the front side of the stone on the first floor. He waited as the system searched through the video, saved from his visual data. The system confirmed it had found the saved data. Nano began creating an augmented video of just the front side of the stone for him. The augmented video appeared. The poem read, "The mighty wind blows, and the clouds fly high. After spreading my name across the continent, I returned home. How could I not protect the four corners of my nation with the brave warriors I have gathered?" Young Master Cheon Woon stared intently at the poem, wondering if there might be a hint hidden somewhere within the words. Then it hit him. This ancient three-stanza poem was from the Han Dynasty. It was a poem written by Liu Bong when he'd returned from his victory over Xiang Yu. Young Master Cheon Woon realized with a frown that it wasn't even a poem written by the heavenly demon ancestor. Young Master Cheon Woon paused, wondering if any of the words had been changed. Turns out there were none. He thought to himself that this was strange. Young Master Cheon Woon asked Nano to analyze the surface of the stone to see if there was even the tiniest clue. The system confirmed it would analyze the entire surface of the stone. After analyzing, Nano announced that it had found small holes under each character. Young Master Cheon Woon realized that there really was something hidden here. He pointed out that the number of dots was different for each character, wondering what this could mean. Young Master Cheon Woon stared at the small holes. He wondered if they were referring to blood pressure points. He thought, so 4 holes would mean 4 blood pressure points. Nah, what would they mean? Young Master Cheon Woon suddenly remembered that the first book he had Nano was about blood pressure points. He recalled that that book had a number and a footnote for each blood pressure point. Young Master Cheon Woon muttered that the 4th blood pressure point would be the solar plexus point, located in the stomach. He realized that the energy flow should start from the dantian, but that would mean 7 dots. Suddenly, he had an idea. Young Master Cheon Woon realized that the character for big had 3 strokes, so if he added the 4 dots, it became 7. He was definitely on the right track. Young Master Cheon Woon continued, noting that wind had 9 strokes and the dots below it were. Young Master Cheon Woon looked up, realizing that the last one was the 23rd blood point. He was figuring it out. Young Master Cheon Woon grinned, finally understanding. He had figured it out. Young Master Cheon Woon threw his fists up in the air, shouting that he had figured out the hidden energy flow. He looked absolutely absolutely thrilled. Young Master Cheon Yo-woon laughed like a maniac, declaring himself a genius. Nearby, one of the guards tilted his head, looking confused by the sudden outburst. Miles away, the wind blew through the mountain peaks. The birds flew under the clouds. Back at the main building, people bustled around. The place was always busy. Young Master Cheon Yo-woon, having just finished a large dinner, decided he should quickly head to the individual training facility. He was going to try out the absolute technique using the proper energy flow. Young Master Cheon Yo-woon paused, looking stunned. He hadn't expected to be interrupted. The guy stepped forward, introducing himself as Yumpa, the 200th cadet. He asked young Master Cheon Yo-woon if he would be willing to duel. Young Master Cheon Yo-woon looked at him suspiciously, asking why he should even bother. He didn't see any reason to fight a stranger. Yumpa realized he hadn't thought things through. He admitted that he was only thinking about himself. Yumpa offered a deal. If young Master Cheon Yo-woon could beat him, he'd give him a gift and intel on the third test. He looked pretty confident. The two figures stood in the clearing, surrounded by trees. The air was still, almost like the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Yumpa looked confused. He asked what reason young Master Cheon Yo-woon had to act so foolishly as to request a duel with information on the line. Yumpa admitted that if he had to explain himself, it would be to check young Master Cheon Yo-woon's qualifications. He looked at Cheon Yo-woon, waiting for a reaction. Yumpa smiled, looking pretty confident. He said it might not be as impressive as the technique that young Master Cheon Yo-woon used to cut off Ryo's arm, but he was going to show him the technique that the Moon Energy Blade clan prides themselves on. Yumpa gestured, telling young Master Cheon Yo-woon to come at him. He looked ready to fight. His eyes narrowed. Yumpa started gathering energy, the air around him crackling with power. Cheon Yo-woon was still on the ground, trying to get back on his feet. Yumpa unleashed the technique, a burst of pure energy aimed straight at Cheon Yo-woon. The force of the attack was so strong that it kicked up dust and debris everywhere. Everything seemed to slow down. Cheon Yo-woon's eyes widened, realizing he was about to get hit hard. At the last second, Cheon Yo-woon managed to raise his arms, trying to block the attack. The impact was still brutal, every muscle screaming in pain. The force of the blow sent Cheon Yo-woon flying backwards, blood splattering from the wound. He hit the ground hard, gasping for breath. Yumpa stared down at the dust cloud he had created. He started to say something, but he couldn't find the words. Yumpa realized he might have put too much power into that last strike. He was sweating now, and he asked himself if Cheon Yo-woon was still alive. Yumpa lay on the ground, spitting out blood. He couldn't believe he had lost so easily. He thought that after seeing Cheon Yo-woon fight against Cheon Wan-ryo, they would have at least traded a few dozen techniques. Yumpa stared at his trembling hand, feeling the shock of the fight. He wondered if Cheon Yo-woon had been hiding his skills. He thought it was amazing. Cheon Yo-woon stood over Yumpa, not even breathing hard. Yumpa coughed, acknowledging that Cheon Yo-woon was as strong as expected from someone with heaven's lineage. Cheon Yo-woon looked down at Yumpa suspiciously. He said that he thought Yumpa only had the skills of an advanced martial artist. Cheon Yo-woon reminded Yumpa that he promised to give him the information. But first, Cheon Yo-woon wanted to know why he had requested a duel, since he should have nothing to gain, win or lose. Yumpa laughed, his face bruised and brutal. He said that Cheon Yo-woon didn't trust him. He said that he simply wanted to check the qualifications, just like he said earlier. Cheon Yo-woon listened suspiciously. Yumpa asked if he was talking about his own qualifications. Yumpa clarified that he was also talking about his own qualifications, because it was for the third test. Yumpa then asked what the duel had to do with the third test. Yumpa smiled cruelly, revealing more of his plan. He said that there was a high chance that the third test would also be a group stage. He seemed to be enjoying this. Cheon Yo-woon looked absolutely shocked. He asked what Yumpa was talking about. He reminded Yumpa that the academy head himself said that there would be no more group tests. Yumpa smirked, revealing that it would be nothing like the second test. He said that the third test would place a premium value on an individual's strength. Yumpa continued that the objective of the third test was to select high-ranked warriors. Only advanced martial artists, which possess advanced martial arts and at least final class sword skill, can become a high high-ranked warrior. Cheon Yo-woon considered the information. He pointed out that among the cadets that passed the second test, only about 20% could be considered advanced martial artists. So, in order to make up for the lack of internal energy, they'd have to take the Black Dragon medicine ball. Yunpa explained that when the medicine balls were handed out, the cadets would suddenly gain 30 years worth of internal energy. But he warned that there was still a bigger problem. Cheon Yo-woon looked up. His eyes narrowed. He asked if the issue was advanced martial arts. Yunpa confirmed it. He explained that since the second floor of the library only had intermediate martial arts, many cadets would fail. Yunpa revealed that they would also be given a secret book for an advanced martial art. Cheon Yo-woon stared at him, his expression unreadable. He asked if that was all there was to it. Yunpa smirked, knowing he had Cheon Yo-woon's attention. He explained that if the third test was simply learning the martial art, over 80% would pass. He added that the secret book should contain the 7 demon sword technique, which is part of the sword demon sword formations and usable by all the high-ranked warriors of the cult. Cheon Yo-woon had heard of the sword demon sword formations before. Turns out, they were sword formations created by the greatest swordsman of his time, the sword demon himself. Yunpa explained that the technique was originally created to combat Soram's 18 disciple and 108 disciple formations, but among them, the 7 demon sword technique was special, despite being only an advanced martial art. When 12 people used it together, it became the 12 sword formation, and when 36 people used it, the 36 sword formation. Yunpa continued that when 108 people used it, it became the 108 sword formation. He said that a plain advanced martial art becoming a terrifying sword formation was amazing. Cheon Yo-woon listened carefully as Yunpa explained that even an advanced martial artist could beat an expert with the 12 sword formation, a master with the 36 sword formation, and that the 108 sword formation had the power to face off against even a grandmaster. Yunpa revealed that his father had formed a 12-man group to learn the 7 demon sword technique. Cheon Yo-woon asked suspiciously how many people were in the group. Yunpa explained that mastering the 7 demon sword technique wasn't enough by itself. He added that performing the sword demon sword formation was quite difficult, so much so that unless you were an advanced martial artist, you couldn't even understand the formation. Cheon Yo-woon asked if that was why Yunpa had tried to test his skills through a duel. Yunpa admitted that was exactly the reason, explaining that he couldn't judge Cheon Yo-woon after having seen simply one technique. Yunpa said that he needed to confirm Cheon Yo-woon's skills to know if he could request him for the test. Cheon Yo-woon looked confused and repeated the word request. Yunpa realized he had forgotten to mention something important. He said that the cadets were expected to take the lead on the third test, from learning the martial arts to everything else. Yunpa added that he had heard that the group leaders were decided from the results of the second test. Cheon Yo-woon asked if that meant the group leaders would pick their group members. Yunpa confirmed that was right. He added that a cadet could refuse to join a group. Yunpa assumed that the third test was more for the 6 main clans and the young masters rather than for ordinary cadets. Yunpa clarified that from now on, the Sons of the Lord would be working under the name of Son of an Important Household and had nothing to do with royalty. Young Master Cheon Yo-woon considered the situation. So, the third test was another part of the Battle of the Heirs. It would mean immediate disqualification if he couldn't gather men and master the 7 demon sword technique and the sword formation. But the rules of the test became clearer. As mentioned, the cadets could refuse to join a group, but did the normal cadets really have any choice but to rely on the group leaders in order to pass the test? Yunpa gestured, explaining that gathering members and mastering the sword formation was just the beginning. He added that it was obvious to desire a leader with both skills and leadership to pass the test. Yunpa grinned, saying that he told young master Cheon Yo-woon that he'd give him a gift, and that gift was him. Cheon Yo-woon stared back coldly, thinking that no one had asked for him. Yunpa shrugged, dismissing any possibility that young master wouldn't be chosen as a group leader. He insisted that he was positive that young master Cheon Yo-woon would be selected. He added that someone as skilled as him would be better than a half-assed cadet for the young master to pass the test. Young Master Cheon Yo-woon listened closely, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. He thought to himself that Yunpa had enough skill to be a group leader himself, so why pick him? He decided he'd have to use that to figure out what was going on. He asked Yunpa why he picked him when there were other Vice Lord candidates and group leaders who had passed the second test. Yunpa explained that he didn't want to sour the young master's mood, but he had already made an offer to the young masters of the Dark Clan and Sword Clan. He admitted that he was rejected because they already had all their seats filled. Young Master asked if he was Yumpa's backup plan. Yumpa replied that he was, and that they shared the path of the blade. Young Master stared back, asking if that was so. Yumpa clarified that he wasn't asking to be accepted as a subordinate. He was simply asking for Young Master to use him in order to pass the third test. He begged Young Master to please accept him. Young Master Cheon Yo Woon stared back at Yumpa, a slight smile creeping across his face. He seemed to be enjoying Yumpa's desperation. Yumpa thanked the Young Master, but then immediately refused his request. He asked what he meant by that. Young Master Cheon Yo Woon looked down at Yumpa and repeated that he refused. There was no room for argument. The wind blew through the trees above, carrying the scent of distant rain. The forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Young Master Cheon Yo Woon called out to Nano to start a facial analysis. He knew it wasn't perfect, but it was the right move to activate it when he thought something was off about Yumpa. He saw the analysis results. Nano reported that there was a small change in Yumpa's facial muscles, indicating a 45% chance he was lying. But as he continued to speak, Nano revealed that the chance had gone up to 62%. Young Master Cheon Yo Woon was not fooled. He knew that Yumpa was hiding something. He thought to himself that he was only playing it safe, since it was still just a chance that Yumpa was lying. Meanwhile, Yumpa was talking to another man. The man said that they were walking the path of the blade. He added that they even shared the path of the blade, whatever that meant. Young Master Cheon Yo Woon realized that Yumpa was pursuing the blade, yet he only went to the Dark and Sword Clan candidates. He thought that Yumpa must think he's a fool for cleverly omitting the Blade Clan. Yumpa and the man were laughing like crazy. Yumpa couldn't believe that Young Master Cheon Yo Woon had refused after listening to the information on the third test. The man thought that Young Master Cheon Yo Woon was such an interesting fellow. He added that Young Master Cheon Yo Woon got what he wanted and dipped. He knew that Young Master Cheon Yo Woon wouldn't fall for such an obvious trap. The man questioned Yumpa's next move, asking if he was going to crawl back and beg Young Master Cheon Yo Woon to take him in. He didn't think the Young Master was stupid enough to fall for that. The man continued, explaining that the plan was to join Young Master Cheon Yo Woon's group and then disqualify him by leaving the group on the day of the test. He thought it would have been funny if it went as planned, but it'd be a waste for the Young Master to get disqualified over something so small. He added that if the Young Master wasn't a rival in the Battle of the Airs, he would do whatever he could to recruit him. Yumpa, now kneeling, begged the man to give him another chance, insisting that he still had other plans. The man dismissed Yumpa, saying that was fine, and he didn't have to do this anymore. He told Yumpa to find a group to join before it was too late, or maybe he'd even become a group leader. Yumpa was confused, asking what about something, but he didn't get to finish his sentence. The man cut him off, saying that there were already a few guys besides Yumpa that he needed to sort out. Yumpa was on the ground, still trying to figure out what had just happened. He was completely outmatched. The man stared down at Yumpa with a cruel smile, telling him he had no use for someone that was useless. He told him to get lost. Yumpa was sweating bullets, realizing his situation was getting worse. He was completely terrified. The man watched Young Master Cheon Yo Woon walk away, thinking about how he had defeated Yumpa in one blow. He remembered his skills from a few days ago weren't at that level. The man crossed his arms, admitting that it was definitely confusing, but he guessed only time would tell if it was luck or skill. He was definitely the man was thinking about the prodigies, wondering if the rumors were actually true. He knew some people in Group 8, but it wasn't enough, and there was no guarantee they'd even listen to him. He stared at his hand, thinking he should just finish his training for the day. He figured he could think about it more back at the dorms later. The man asked Nano if it had finished analyzing the martial arts books they scanned yesterday on the first and second floors of the library. Nano confirmed that it had completed the analysis of the 55 beginner martial arts books on the first floor and the 56 intermediate martial arts books on the second floor. He then asked Nano if it would be possible to make a hologram of a specific person after analyzing their QI and body movements, and then make the hologram reenact martial arts. Nano responded that it was possible if he selected the person as an avatar and specified the martial arts. He thought for a moment, deciding to go with the 5-art sword mastery for the martial arts. He wondered who he should use as the person for the hologram. The system was constructing a hologram of a martial artist, analyzing their movements and QI. It was almost time to test his skills. The hologram of Cheon Mugyum appeared, pointing a knife at him. He shouted at him, calling him a bastard commoner, and demanding he come at him. Cheon Yo Woon thought to himself that the insult was going to be stuck in his head all day. Cheon Mugyum's hologram lunged forward, screaming that he still didn't know his place and needed to die. He was really going all out. Cheon Yo Woon barely managed to block the hologram's attack. Sparks flew as their weapons collided. Cheon Yo-woon struck back with a powerful blow, sending the hologram flying. The hologram coughed, clearly damaged by the hit. Cheon Yo-woon looked completely shocked. He couldn't believe it. Cheon Moo-gyum's avatar had died from a neck fracture. What the hell? The system confirmed that Cheon Moo-gyum's avatar couldn't take the full force of his attack. Cheon Moo-gyum's hologram laughed, saying that 4 days ago, he would have only been pushed back. He added that Cheon Yo-woon would regret this. Cheon Yo-woon wondered if he had surpassed Cheon Moo-gyum because of this realization. He thought to himself that this wasn't what he had in mind. He figured that even if he assigned an intermediate martial art to the avatar, it wouldn't make much of a difference. He stared ahead, lost in thought. He was trying to figure out his next move, thinking about how to improve his training. Cheon Yo-woon ordered the system to create 5 Cheon Moo-gyum avatars. Actually, he changed his mind and told it to make 10, giving each of them a different intermediate martial art. The system began creating avatars for the simulation, surrounding Cheon Yo-woon with glowing blue figures. Each avatar was assigned a different intermediate martial art: heaven-splitting flying sword, spinning kick, emotionless sword, triple killing sword, and more. Cheon Yo-woon wondered if he had gotten ahead of himself, thinking 10 avatars might be too many. But Cheon Moo-gyum's avatars immediately started trash-talking him, calling him a cocky commoner, and asking if he was trying to provoke them. They added that he was just a bastard. Cheon Yo-woon wondered if he should readjust the number of avatars, but quickly changed his mind. He told the system there was no need, and to just start it. He was going to kill them all. The avatars charged at him, weapons drawn. Cheon Yo-woon realized he was about to be attacked from all sides at once. He braced himself, knowing this was going to be tough. Cheon Yo-woon managed to block the first wave of attacks, deflecting blades and kicks. But as he prepared for the next attack, he looked surprised. Something unexpected was coming. Cheon Yo-woon came down hard, his kick aimed right at the avatar's head. The force of the blow sent the avatar crashing to the ground, the impact shaking the entire training room. The system announced it was temporarily suspending augmented reality. Cheon Yo-woon fell hard, the sudden shift throwing him off balance. Cheon Yo-woon groaned, feeling the pain from the fall. He realized he'd forgotten just how small the training room was, without the augmented reality making it seem bigger. Cheon Yo-woon looked up, his eyes widening at the sight of the cracked ceiling. The room was a mess, a clear sign of the battle that had just taken place. Another man stumbled into the room, holding his head in pain. He asked what the hell had happened to the ceiling, clearly not happy about the damage. The instructor scolded Cheon Yo-woon, reminding him that he had been warned. He declared that Cheon Yo-woon was banned from the individual training facility from now on. Cheon Yo-woon could only apologize, feeling a little embarrassed. The instructor turned and started walking, gesturing for Cheon Yo-woon to follow. Cheon Yo-woon followed quietly, wondering where he was being led. They walked for a few minutes, arriving at another building. The system noted that the building appeared to be about half the size of the individual training facility, but the width of the door was much larger, which was weird. The instructor gestured towards the entrance and told Cheon Yo-woon that he would be training here from now on. Cheon Yo-woon looked shocked, not expecting to be moved to a different location. The instructor smirked, explaining that Cheon Yo-woon would just end up breaking the walls again if he continued using the individual training facility. He seemed amused by the destruction Cheon Yo-woon had caused. Cheon Yo-woon looked around in disbelief, wondering where he was. It was much larger and nicer than the individual training facility. He realized it was a training area that was normally only given to those who reached the expert level and passed the 4th test. He was shocked by this sudden change. The instructor explained that since Cheon Yo-woon had caused another incident, this space was made available a little earlier with the academy head's approval. Cheon Yo-woon asked how the instructor knew that he had reached the level of an expert. The instructor replied that to break the hard walls of the individual training facility, he needed at least expert level QI. The instructor assured Cheon Yo-woon that these walls were made with an even harder material, so they shouldn't break no matter how crazy he got. He told Cheon Yo-woon not to worry about it and to focus on his training. Cheon Yo-woon thanked him, relieved. Now alone, Cheon Yo-woon thought that with a training room of this size, he wouldn't have any problems using augmented reality. He asked Nano what time it was. Nano replied that it was a little past 8 p.m. He realized he still had time to train. Cheon Yo-woon wondered if he should continue dueling against 10 Cheon Moo-gyum avatars, since a single advanced martial artist was too weak. Suddenly, an idea sparked in his mind. Cheon Yo-woon wondered if he could duel against Sob Maeng Sensei's avatar. He asked Nano if it was possible to create one based only on the movements of the butterfly dance that Seob Maeng had shown them in the infirmary. Cheon Yo-woon figured that even with limited data, Seob Maeng would be more helpful than Cheon Mugum. Nano initiated augmented reality in Cheon Yo-woon's vision, asking him to select a martial art. For now, Nano would use the butterfly dance and create an avatar for the simulation, targeting Seob Maeng. Even though it was just an avatar, Cheon Yo-woon felt more tense than when he fought Seob Geum's avatar. Suddenly, Seob Maeng's avatar appeared, pointing a finger at Cheon Yo-woon. The avatar called him a rookie, asking if he was now revolting against his sensei. The avatar laughed, saying that Cheon Yo-woon was beyond laughable. Cheon Yo-woon asked Nano to mute Seob Maeng, finding him annoying. Nano acknowledged. The system also informed him that Seob Maeng was among the top 10 martial artists within the demonic clan. Cheon Yo-woon knew he was no match for Seob Maeng in terms of martial skill. He decided to aim for Seob Maeng's weakness with a preemptive attack, but the avatar blocked his techniques with ease. How could he block them so easily? The avatar's attack slammed into Cheon Yo-woon with incredible force, sending shockwaves through the air. He winced in pain as blood trickled down his face from the impact. The avatar of Seob Maeng didn't let up, pressing the attack. It moved with blinding speed, each strike carrying the full weight of its martial skill. The avatar's attack sent Cheon Yo-woon flying back, slamming him against the hard floor. He coughed, feeling the pain shoot through his body. Cheon Yo-woon lay on the ground, spitting blood. He thought to himself that he knew he would be no match for the avatar, but he didn't think he'd be taken down with a single technique. Cheon Yo-woon stared at the blue outline of the avatar. So, this was the skill of one of the top 10 martial artists in the demonic cult. He realized. The system asked him if he wanted to change the martial arts of the avatar. Cheon Yo-woon shouted, denying the offer. The system announced that combat was resuming. The Seob Maeng avatar asked if he wanted to try again, chuckling at the thought. The Seob Maeng avatar grinned, ready to finish the fight. He shouted that he was going to try out his absolute technique, asking if Cheon Yo-woon was even ready for it. Cheon Yo-woon stared intently, his eyes narrowed. He was trying to process the technique, to understand the flow of energy. Cheon Yo-woon raised his hands, trying to block the incoming attack. The force of the avatar's technique was overwhelming, and he could feel the pressure building. The avatar moved with impossible speed, striking from every direction. Cheon Yo-woon was desperately trying to keep up, but he was being pushed back further and further. Cheon Yo-woon's eyes widened as he felt something click into place. He realized that it was working, that he was starting to understand the technique. Cheon Yo-woon prepared to unleash everything he had. He knew this was the final movement, the last chance to turn the tide. But even as he moved, the Seob Maeng avatar was faster. The avatar's attack landed with brutal force, sending Cheon Yo-woon flying. Cheon Yo-woon crashed to the ground, coughing up blood. He could feel every bone in his body aching, every muscle screaming in pain. Cheon Yo-woon struggled to get back on his feet, but his body wouldn't listen. He thought that he was still no match for Sensei, even with the absolute technique. He was starting to get desperate. Then, Cheon Yo-woon saw something flicker in his vision. The system interface was lighting up, showing him something new. The system showed the Seob Maeng avatar, highlighting the damage he had managed to inflict. There were sword wounds all over the avatar, but they were shallow. Cheon Yo-woon realized that his sword technique might have surpassed Sensei's avatar, but he couldn't deal a critical blow. The massive difference in martial prowess was the problem, and he couldn't face off against a real master just by having gained the absolute technique. Cheon Yo-woon knew he had 4 years to complete the 8 arts of the demonic academy. Within those years, he would surpass Sensei, starting with his avatar. Days later, he was at the demonic academy grand martial training grounds. The air was thick with dust and the scent of sweat. Cheon Yo-woon looked frustrated. He had given it his all the previous day, yet the best he could do was fight on par with 10 Cheon Mugum avatars. He still had a long way to go. Lee Hameng, his voice booming across the training grounds, asked if they'd enjoyed their 4-day break. He then called out for Motto, his voice sharp and demanding. Lee Hameng announced that they would explain the 3rd test and distribute the Black Dragon medicine balls. He added that the test would require 12 people to perform a formation. A murmur rippled through the crowd of cadets. They looked at each other, some with concern, others with determination. Cheon Yo-woon realized that his intel was accurate. The minimum requirement for being part of the 12-person formation was advanced martial prowess. Nearby, someone placed their hand on a stack of books, the sound echoing softly in the training grounds. The next test was coming, and preparations were already underway. Lee Ha-meng explained that this was the basics for the Sword Demon Sword formation, which the main branch of the demonic cult prided itself on. He added that the secret martial arts book for the advanced martial art was the 7 Demon Sword. Lee Ha-meng told them that if they absorbed the medicine balls given out today and worked hard to learn the 7 Demon Sword, there shouldn't be any problems achieving advanced martial art prowess. The cadets listened intently, their expressions a mix of hope and determination. Cheon Yo-woon's expression grew serious as he listened. Lee Ha-meng continued, telling them that up till here, it didn't seem that difficult, but the third test would occur on exactly the 28th day from today. Lee Ha-meng stated that each group in a formation had to defeat the martial arts instructors standing in front of them right now. The instructors stood silently, their faces unreadable. The cadets started murmuring amongst themselves, clearly shocked. One of them asked if every instructor wasn't a martial arts expert. The idea of defeating them seemed impossible. Cheon Yo-woon thought to himself that he heard some of the instructors had even reached the prowess of a master. He was just thinking it sounded too easy, and that it would be much easier to just fight the other cadets. He realized everything was going as Yunpa had said it would, so all that was left was for them to announce the group leaders. Lee Ha-meng explained that the entire process would be different from the second test. He announced that they would leave everything up to the cadets, so they should do their best to gather up group members and learn the sword formation. Lee Ha-meng continued, saying that after he explained the selection process for the group leaders, they'd hand out the secret books and medicine balls before dispersing. Cheon Yo-woon was surprised and wondered if they weren't selecting by grades. Lee Ha-meng asked if they saw the name tags on the instructors in the front row. He announced that the 17 martial instructors there would be the target. The students who could take the yellow name tags from them within 7 days would be the group leaders. The cadets were completely stunned. One of them exclaimed that taking the name tag of an instructor was basically saying they'd kick them all out. They looked around at each other, realizing how screwed they were. One of the cadets was starting to understand the situation. He realized that if they couldn't take all the name tags, the number of groups would decrease, and some people were destined to fail. He also realized they wanted them to steal the instructor's name tags before they even got to the main test. The cadet was clearly worried. The other cadets started to panic. One of them said that the instructors with yellow name tags wouldn't use their special techniques and would only use the 7 Demon Sword. Another cadet chimed in, saying that it didn't solve their problems because it didn't make a difference that an expert was only using an advanced martial art. They were screwed. A cadet realized the instructor's hidden intentions. He explained that to be able to nullify the 7 Demon Sword within a short time, they needed to have a deep understanding of its sword movements. He continued, saying that they didn't decide on this method simply to raise the difficulty, but to give the cadets a sense of crisis and make them desperate. Lee Ha-meng watched the cadets from above. He thought to himself that they were all confused and wondered if he should shake them up a bit more. He grinned, enjoying their suffering. Lee Ha-meng spoke up, asking if any cadets wanted to challenge them right now, even though they had 7 days. He was clearly trying to provoke them. Lee Ha-meng looked down at the cadets and thought that he expected at least one of them to volunteer. He wondered if he expected too much, because if they had insides and skills, it would be a great chance to gain recognition. But of course, it would have the opposite effect if they lost. Lee Ha-meng sighed and said that he guessed none of them had that much insides. He paused, raising his hand as if to say something important. Lee Ha-meng's face stretched into a grin, and he exclaimed, clearly about to announce something that would shake things up. Lee Ha-meng announced that the leader of Group 1 was Kinyeon Mu Leon, the Dark Clan's Vice Lord candidate. He then added that the leader of Group 8 was Cheon Yo-woon. Lee Ha-meng continued, pointing out that the one who defeated the Poison Clan's Vice Lord candidate, Cheon Jong-sum, and became Group 12's leader was Cadet 18, Baek Gi. Lee Ha-meng's eyes widened slightly. He was thinking that 2 guys he didn't expect had volunteered. He thought that it was how exciting. The guy with the ponytail just stared ahead, waiting to see what would happen next. The air was thick with tension, and everyone was on edge. One of the guys muttered that Cheon Jong-sum wasn't the leader of Group 12 anymore. He added that the new leader looked pretty fierce from where he was standing. Lee Ha-meng laughed, saying he liked the fire in their eyes. He then asked the instructors which of them wanted to step up and entertain the cadet. A group of guys started walking forward, their eyes locked on the cadets. They moved like a pack, ready to pounce. Lee Hameng scowled, pointing out that the guys were the instructors for groups 1, 8, and 12. He added that he'd already told them not to get attached to their cadets. Senior martial instructor Ho Jin Chang spoke up, curious about the situation. Meanwhile, instructor Lee Hameng stared up at him. The cadets stood in formation, their swords gleaming in the dim light. They knew that whatever came next would test them to their limits. Lim Pyong, the supervisor for Group 8, chimed in. He said there was no need for him to volunteer if Ho Jin Chang was taking charge. The instructors warned Cheon Yo Woon that he'd have to look after himself from now on. They added that no matter who he picked, none of them would go easy on him. Lee Hameng figured that each instructor was planning on facing off against a different group's cadet to deny them the position of group leader. He added that thanks to Ho Jin Chang, it wouldn't be as unfair of a bout, and suggested they start with the leader of Group 1, Cadet Number 1. Instructor Yo Soon stepped forward, raising his voice to be heard. He insisted that he should be the one to fight, addressing the academy director directly. Another instructor was furious that Yo Soon had volunteered. He thought to himself, how dare Yo Soon try to take this fight? He had a vested interest in this cadet. He was worried that Cheon Ma Yun would be humiliated, and he couldn't allow that to happen. Another instructor raised his hand, volunteering to fight Cadet Number 18. He figured that the cadet shouldn't have tested Ho Jin Chang's patience. Lee Hameng approved the offer. Sang Moon Yo smirked to himself, revealing that he was planning on facing Cheon Yo Woon anyway. He would let the others fight it out, and then he would take the prize. The cadets stood in formation, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The air was thick with anticipation as the instructors finalized their plans. The cadets watched, ready for the fight to begin. Cheon Yo Woon focused all his attention on the upcoming battle, telling the nano to record everything. Lee Hameng's face was twisted in excitement as he yelled, "Begin!" The instructor didn't waste any time. He immediately unleashed the flowing cloud palm. The instructor smirked, confident in his attack. He thought to himself that it was the flowing cloud palm, one of the 3 best techniques of the main branch, even stronger than Lan's striking dragon wave. He was surprised that he had to use the 7 demon sword on a junior like Cheon Yo Woon. He then unleashed the 5th sword of the 7 demon sword, but he was shocked that the sword movements felt so familiar. The instructor continued his assault, but Cheon Yo Woon blocked every move. The air crackled with energy as the two fought. The instructor couldn't believe it. Cheon Yo Woon wasn't even shaken up despite his attacks being blocked. The instructor could tell from the flowing movement of his palm technique that Cheon Yo Woon was highly skilled, with expert martial prowess. In terms of martial technique, he had reached the level of a clan elder. He'd have to stop treating him as a mere cadet. Even though the flowing dark cloud palm was a higher level martial art, Cheon Yo Woon was blocking his attacks like it was nothing. The instructor was shocked. How could an advanced martial art block his attacks so easily? Cheon Yo Woon couldn't believe it. The techniques might be different, but the sword movements that made up this technique were exactly the same as the ones in the effective sword techniques left on the sapphire. The only real difference was that the 7 demon sword only had 12 sword movements, which was 1/2 of the 24 sword movements of the destructive sword techniques. There was no way to be certain, but the sword demon might be the one who left all those countless sword marks. The clash of their techniques sent sparks flying. Each strike was met with an equal and opposite force, neither giving an inch. The air around them crackled with raw power. The instructor realized that Cheon Yo Woon was an expert like him, but slightly more skilled. Since he could block his palm techniques with only an advanced martial art, he bet Cheon Yo Woon had far more combat experience. He guessed he was an instructor for a reason. The instructor knew he had to end the fight quickly, or he'd be at an even bigger disadvantage. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was about to come. It couldn't be helped. The instructor changed his stance, gathering all his energy. Cheon Yo Woon realized he was planning on ending the fight with his ultimate move. He prepared to block the strike. The instructor launched a right palm technique. Cheon Yo Woon focused, ready to block the attack. Cheon Yo Woon was caught completely off guard. The instructor's left hand, the instructor's palm, slammed into Cheon Yo Woon, sending him flying back. He coughed up blood from the force of the impact. The instructor realized the movements were the same as before, but now inverted. He thought it was going to be hard to deal with, and decided to seal Cheon Yo Woon's left hand. Cheon Yo Woon managed to raise his arms in time to block the instructor's attack. The force of the blow still shook him to his core, but before the instructor could follow up, Cheon Yo Woon struck back. A blade of pure chi pierced through the instructor's defenses. The instructor coughed up blood, his eyes wide with shock. He hadn't expected Cheon Yo-woon to be able to pull off such a technique. The cadets watching the fight were going wild. They couldn't believe that Cheon Yo-woon had actually beaten an instructor, and with a chi blade no less. One of them thought that Cheon Yo-woon was already at expert martial prowess, and that the Dark Clan's young master was the closest to the position of Vice Lord. Lee Ha-meng thought to himself that the technique was a secret art that let one use two special techniques at once, inverting from left to right and vice versa at will. He knew it secured the Dark Clan's leader, Mu Jin-won's, place as the second best martial artist in the cult. He realized that the only one who managed to master it was in front of him, and that Cheon Yo-woon was a true genius. Lee Ha-meng told Cheon Yo-woon that he had earned the right to become a group leader for the third test. Cheon Yo-woon thanked him. As the crowd clapped, Cheon Yo-woon thought about the wording of the test. Something about it bothered him. He wondered if one person was able to earn only one name tag. Cheon Yo-woon stood alone in the training grounds. The eyes of the crowd focused on him. The tension in the air was heavy, the silence broken only by the rustling of robes. Cheon Yo-woon decided to put a hold on that thought, since how he did here would decide his future. He needed to prove himself in front of everyone. The instructor thought to himself that Cheon Yo-woon was impressive. He couldn't believe that Cheon Yo-woon wasn't nervous, but instead all fired up, despite being face to face with an instructor. The instructor admitted he was a bit surprised. He thought Cheon Yo-woon wouldn't even make it past the first test. However, the instructor thought something was still bothering him.